Chapter 48, 27. At this moment, Shopkeeper Howe's tears flowed down his face. They were both in booth number 4, but his 10 golden condensing nascent pills were only worth 2 million spirit jades, while the other party's great returning pill was worth 3.5 million spirit jades. What was there to fight over? As expected, after a few auctions in the all-knowing gathering, the total transaction value was as high as 7,600,000 spirit jades, far surpassing the wealthy associations. Shopkeeper Howe's face instantly turned green with regret. Whether it was instigating the Morning Star auction ceremony or preparing all sorts of auction items, his wealthy guild was definitely the one who put in the most effort. In the end, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. In the end, the all-knowing Grand Assembly had taken the lead. The auction continued, and the next to appear was the Eastern Continent's Eastern Chamber of Commerce. However, they were not as scheming as the previous two. Although the treasures they brought out were rare treasures, they were not large in quantity and did not have enough gimmicks. In the end, the total transaction value was only 5 million spirit jades. It seemed like they did not intend to compete for the partnership with the Morning Star Academy. From the beginning until now, although the crowd was in an uproar, Lin Yi did not have any intention of bidding. With his capital, he obviously did not lack spirit jades. It was just that these auctioned items were too orthodox, and it was difficult for him to be interested in them. After all, he could refine the 7th grade great recovering pill himself, so there was no need for him to bid. This was a common problem with the Chamber of Commerce's auctions. If one wanted to see all kinds of strange treasures, they would have to wait until the individual auctions. All right, the next auction item is from the Central Chamber of Commerce. I believe everyone has heard of it. They are all high-tech products from the secular world. Before we start the auction, we will first demonstrate their functions, the white-bearded old man announced. As soon as he finished speaking, the staff of the Central Chamber of Commerce brought a series of technological products onto the stage and demonstrated them one by one. After all, if the functions of these things were not clearly explained, no one would know what they were used for. Of course, they would not be able to auction them. Tablets, digital cameras, walkie-talkies. Lin Yi looked at the row of technological products on the stage and shook his head speechlessly. He even saw micro-tapping devices among them. If he didn't know that this was Heaven Stage Island, he might have thought that this was some kind of digital store in the secular world. After the demonstration, the auction continued. Although there weren't any elixirs or heavenly treasures this time, the audience's response was equally enthusiastic. However, although these technological products were novel, it was impossible for them to be like the 7th grade Great Revitalizing Pill, which was sold at a sky-high price of several million spirit jades. After all, no one was a fool. They could accept spending several tens of thousands of spirit jades for entertainment, but they couldn't afford to spend millions of spirit jades, unless water got into his head. In the end, the Central Chamber of Commerce's series of technological products only sold for less than 2 million spirit jades. This was also because of the large quantity. Otherwise, even 1 million would not be realistic. Of course, it was impossible for the Central Chamber of Commerce to compete with the Morning Star Academy. After all, what the Academy needed the most were various kinds of spirit jades, and this was precisely the Central Chamber of Commerce's weak point. It was not something that could be made up for in a short period of time. After watching this round of excitement, Lin Yi sighed in disappointment. He had thought that the Central Chamber of Commerce would be able to communicate with the secular world, like the Central Island auction. If that was the case, he would definitely bid for it. It was a pity that he didn't mention this matter from start to finish. It seemed like what Si Haishao had said was true. The Central Chamber of Commerce had already stopped this business. Every Chamber of Commerce took the stage. Other than a few exceptions like the Eastern Chamber of Commerce and the Central Chamber of Commerce, almost all the chambers of commerce that participated in this auction were aiming for the Morning Star Academy's partnership. They all gave their all, and good things that could not be bought normally could be found everywhere. However, there was a huge disparity in the strength of the chambers of commerce. The small chambers of commerce could not be compared to the large chambers of commerce. It was fine for them to take out 1 or 2 precious items, but it was impossible for them to take out 8 or 10 of them at once. If it was just a normal treasure, it would obviously not be able to make it to this level of auction. As a result, there were very few chambers of commerce that could reach a total of 3 million spirit jades. As for the record of 6 million spirit jades, even the rich and powerful chambers of commerce could only look at it in the dust. If there were no accidents, the all-purpose chamber of commerce was destined to be the biggest winner of this auction. From then on, it would become the only supplier for the Morning Star Academy. It could be foreseen that in the future, the title of the #1 Chamber of Commerce in Morning Star City would change owners and fall on the head of the all-purpose Chamber of Commerce. One had to know that in Morning Star City, whether or not one could obtain the full support of the Morning Star Academy was a decisive factor for any Chamber of Commerce. After all the chambers of commerce had their turn, the last to appear was the Hong Chamber of Commerce. After all, it was the only Chamber of Commerce that cooperated with the Academy. According to common sense, it should be the last to appear. However, those with a discerning eye knew that the Hong Chamber of Commerce was not as good as it was in the past. It was a true sacrificial lamb in this auction. Although it sounded impressive to be the last to appear, it was actually done on purpose to embarrass him. Everyone knew that the last item had to be of a higher level than all the previous items. If it could not satisfy everyone's expectations, then the Hong Chamber of Commerce's reputation would be destroyed, and they would never be able to raise their heads in Morning Star City again. We worked so hard for nothing, and now we're letting that one guy take advantage of us. Luckily, us rich and powerful chambers of commerce have always been at odds with the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Destroying one of their branches can be considered an explanation to the higher-ups. Shopkeeper How comforted himself as he hid in box 12. That's right. With that little bit of ability of Honest Chai, he can't even take out a few golden nascent pills, let alone the finale? Just wait for him to make a fool of himself. Shopkeeper Jean laughed coldly. Everyone, there are still 4 more items to be auctioned. They are all from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Please wait and see. The white-bearded old man introduced. As soon as these words were spoken, the insiders like Shopkeeper How, who were waiting to see a joke, revealed an as expected expression. The Hong Chamber of Commerce was truly at a dead end. Such an important auction actually only had 4 items to auction. One had to know that every Chamber of Commerce could only take out 10 items to auction. Even the Golden Chamber of Commerce had managed to gather 7 items. How could such a trashy Chamber of Commerce be a supplier to the Academy? They were simply a disgrace to the Morning Star Academy. Furthermore, the more items they took out, the higher the total transaction value. This Hong Chamber of Commerce was not even trying to make up for the numbers, and had given up. Chapter 48:28. This was the only time these people could be proud of themselves. They better not be shocked to the point that their jaws dropped. The Hong Merchant Association's first auction item is a set of 10 golden nascent gathering pills of supreme quality. The starting price is 1,500,000 spiritual jades. The white-bearded old man said excitedly. To be honest, even he was shocked when he saw the list for the first time. This was a rare supreme quality pill. Everyone in the audience instantly exploded. Although they were all gathering infant golden pills, high-quality ones were still commonly seen. However, top-quality ones were simply something that could only be discovered by luck. The rarity of these pills could even be compared to 7th-grade pills. Normally, it was extremely difficult to even hear of one, let alone see one. Shopkeeper How and Shopkeeper Jean were so shocked that their jaws were dislocated. Their expressions were extremely colorful. They felt that they were already very impressive when they took out a set of superior golden nascent gathering pills, but in the end they took out a set of supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pills. Wasn't this a slap in the face in front of everyone? Without a doubt, the wealthy families would be completely trampled by the Hong Merchant Association. If they were different from each other, no one would expect the wealthy families to have them even if the Hong Merchant Association took out the best. But now, they both had 10 golden nascent gathering pills. One was only of superior quality, while the other was of supreme quality. The difference between the two was obvious. 3 million. Booth number 4 once again gained the upper hand. Before this, he had only bid 3 times, but each time it was the main item of each Chamber of Commerce. Without a doubt, they were all rare and expensive items, and this time he once again emphasized to everyone the impression he had before, that to him, spirit jades were really just a number. 4 million. This time, the person who spoke was from room number 2. This was the first time he had made a bid, and everyone could not help but guess who was behind this. There were probably only a handful of people in Morningstar City who were qualified to be in room number 2. Although the golden nascent gathering pills were meaningless to these big shots, they were still useful to the younger generation of their sections, especially the rare supreme quality golden nascent gathering pills. Even late nascent soul realm experts would benefit greatly if they used them. They could not be missed. 5 million. Booth number 4 refused to budge. As for the others, they could only look on and sigh again. At this price, even those large chambers of commerce would not dare to make a move, let alone these ordinary cultivators with limited wealth. This was destined to be a bidding game for the privileged. 5 million. Room number 2 spoke again, but this time it was a middle-aged man's voice. Although he didn't do it on purpose, it gave off an oppressive feeling of power without being angry, causing people to instinctively not dare to resist. He could not help but feel that this voice was somewhat familiar. Could it be one of the 3 Morning Star powerhouses, Weihabe? This was very possible. After all, this vice dean had many disciples, and he reckoned that there were also many genius disciples at the golden core stage. The supreme grade golden nascent gathering pill just happened to be of great use to him. This time, booth number 4 didn't say anything. No one felt that he didn't have enough spirit jades on hand. Previously, he could use 5 million spirit jades to buy a grade 7 great recovery pill. This time, he definitely wouldn't be stingy with a mere 5 million spirit jades when faced with 10 supreme grade golden nascent gathering pills. Thus, there was only one explanation. Just like how booth number 6 didn't dare to provoke him, he didn't dare to compete with booth number 2 either. Thus, he had no choice but to concede. In the end, the group of supreme grade golden nascent gathering pills fell into booth number 2's pocket at the price of 5 million spirit jades. All the shopkeepers were instantly speechless. Just the first auction item had already reached 5 million spirit jades. It had already surpassed the grand auction's total transaction of 3 million spirit jades. What else could they do? In booth number 12, Shopkeeper Hao and Shopkeeper Jin's faces had already turned as black as the bottom of a pot. When they thought about how they had mocked and ridiculed Honest Chai, they felt ashamed. They thought that he didn't know how to appreciate their kindness, but it turned out that he was treating them like idiots. Next up is the second auction item from the Hong Merchant Guild, a 7th grade great rejuvenating pill of high quality. The starting price is 8 million spirit jades. The white-bearded old man announced. The crowd was in an uproar again. This Hong Merchant Guild was doing this on purpose. They had just used a group of supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pills to slap the grand auction's face, and now they immediately started to slap the all-access auction's face. One had to know that the all-access auction's 7th grade great rejuvenating pill didn't even mention the word quality. According to the unwritten rules of the auction, This meant that it was only of normal quality. It couldn't even be compared to a medium-quality pill, let alone the Hong Merchant Guild's high-quality 7th grade Great Rejuvenating Pill. Lin shook his head slightly. He originally wanted to try for the supreme grade, but unfortunately at the level of a 7th grade Great Rejuvenating Pill. Even the Divine Armament Cauldron couldn't guarantee the supreme grade. After refining a few times, there weren't many supreme grade pills. This showed how rare it was. Not only did it require the best ingredients, it also required good luck. Previously, a group of supreme grade golden nascent condensation pills was already shocking enough. This time, a superior 7th grade Great Recover pill was released. Not only the people in the venue, but even the VIP boxes were in a commotion. It was also able to heal the injuries and chi of a profound ascending stage master. But the recovery speed between normal quality and high quality was too different. Normal quality needed a day, while high quality only needed an hour. Under normal circumstances, there wasn't much difference, but when it came to a critical moment, the difference between an hour and a day could very well be the difference between life and death. This was a real second life. Finally, after a fierce competition, this 7th grade Great Rejuvenating Pill was sold for a sky-high price of 8 million spirit jades. It once again fell into the hands of the second box. With just 2 items, the Hong Merchant Guild's transaction had already reached a heaven-defying 3 million spirit jades, far surpassing all the other merchant guilds. Even the all-access auction couldn't catch up. From now on, there was no doubt that Morningstar Academy would be the sole supplier. With the first 2 items, the third item didn't need the host to say anything. It had already caught everyone's attention. After all, the previous items were already supreme grade golden nascent gathering pill and high quality 7th grade Great Rejuvenating Pill. Even if the third item was hard to be better, it shouldn't be any worse, right? Chapter 48:29. Lin was startled by the sudden screams. Honest Chai, on the other hand, was as steady as Mount Tai, as if he was prepared for this. He turned around and smiled. From the moment you took out the beauty pill, I knew this would happen. Women are creatures that cannot be explained with logic. As long as the beauty pill is placed in front of them, no matter their age or strength, not a single person would be able to resist. Lin couldn't help but laugh, speechless. He'd thought that only women like Yang Chenxue, whose face was ruined, would be so obsessed with the beauty elixir. He didn't think that all women were like this. No wonder Ning Xuefei couldn't let go of the beauty elixir when she first got it. It was like a woman's life. After the screams subsided, the white-bearded elder continued to announce, 1 high-grade beauty pill, starting price 3 million spiritual jades. It was also a high-grade 7th grade pill, but the starting price was a whole 1,200,000 spiritual jades higher than the Great Revitalizing Pill. It couldn't be helped. This was the classic case of rare things being expensive. In terms of practicality, the 7th grade Great Revitalizing Pill was much more useful than the beauty pill. Unfortunately, it couldn't make women go crazy like the beauty pill. Lin finally understood. No matter where he went, it was still women's money that was the easiest to earn. As soon as the white-bearded old man's voice faded, bids were immediately called out one after another. At this time, spiritual jades were no longer spiritual jades, but just a simple number. Women were absolutely unreasonable at this time. In just a short period of time, the price had already reached an extremely exaggerated 9 million, far surpassing the transaction price of the 7th grade Great Revitalizing Pill just now. Lin was tongue-tied. In his heart, he made up his mind that if he ever lacked spiritual jades in the future, he wouldn't need to do anything. He could just casually concoct a few beauty pills, and he would be able to easily earn tens of millions of spiritual jades. Among them, other than VIP Box 1, All of the VIP boxes that were ranked at the top had made their bids. Even VIP Box 3, who had never spoken before, was no exception. However, VIP Box 3's voice was that of a woman, while the other VIP boxes were all male voices. Of course, since they were bidding for this beauty pill, it was definitely for women. Unless they were psychopaths, ordinary men would not use this kind of thing. Lin Yi paid special attention to room number 3. The voice that had just spoken was hollow and hollow, and it was obvious that it had used some kind of voice-changing technique. However, combined with the ranking of room 3, Lin Yi subconsciously associated it with the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. After all, as one of the 3 giants of the Morning Star Academy, if the divine nun of the Eastern Sea were to personally participate, it would not be strange for her to be allocated Box 3. However, Lin Yi could only guess. Before seeing the true face of the person inside, he could not come to a conclusion. However, upon closer thought, while the beauty pill could drive all women mad, surely the divine nun of the East Sea's cultivation and temperament could not be immune to it, right? However, Box 3 had only opened its mouth once and did not make another bid. It was not as crazy as the others and had only dabbled in it. Therefore, it was not impossible to say that the divine nun of the Eastern Sea was sitting inside. In the end, the high-grade beauty pill was sold at a price of 5 million spirit jades, falling into the hands of booth number 4. Such a sky-high price was unprecedented. Not to mention this auction, even if all the previous Morningstar auctions were to be added together, this would definitely be one of the best. When the dust finally settled, all the women present were heartbroken. To them, missing out on the opportunity to obtain the beauty pill was like losing their lover. They could only blame themselves for not having enough spirit jades on hand. Such an exaggerated figure of less than 10 million was not something that could be taken out by any ordinary organization. They needed to hug onto a sufficiently thick thigh. Next up is the Hong Merchant Association's 4th auction item, and also the last item of today's auction. 5 profound thunder pills of high quality. The white-bearded elder announced at the end. The crowd was in an uproar. This commotion was even more shocking than when the beauty pill had appeared. Earlier, it was just the women who had gone mad, but this time, it was simply everyone's hair standing on end. What kind of merchant association was this, to actually be able to take out high-grade, profound thunder pills, and 5 of them in one go? One had to know that the profound thunder pill was the rarest 7th grade pill in any Golden Step Academy in the East Continent. After all the Golden Step Academy disciples had a common goal, and that was to break through to the profound ascension realm. Only after that could they advance to the profound sea region, and the profound thunder pill was a must for everyone to break through to the profound ascension realm. No matter how talented you were, you could not do without it. Everyone knew that any large chamber of commerce's high-grade pills, especially the 7th grade pills, most of them came from the alchemists of the various academies. Although each of them had some other ways, they were far from being comparable to the alchemists of these academies. This was because the existence of a 7th grade alchemist could only appear in one place in the East Continent, and that was the various academies. Only those academies could truly afford to provide for these 7th grade alchemists, and other places simply could not keep them. But this time the Hong Merchant Association did not rely on the alchemists of the academies and could obtain such a high-grade supply of pills by themselves. Each pill was more frightening than the last, and they could even take out 5 profound thunder pills in one go. This was simply heaven-defying. Seeing the explosive reaction from the crowd, even the usually mild-tempered, honest Chai became excited. If it wasn't for his image as the shopkeeper of a branch, he would have danced with joy in celebration. Your strategy was indeed correct. We don't need a lot of good things, for is enough. Honest Chai looked at Lin Yi with a face full of admiration. According to his original plan, other than the pills that Lin Yi had refined at the last minute, he also wanted to add the items that he had prepared for the auction. However, It was rejected by a single sentence from Lin E. Although the items that they had prepared seemed rare, everyone could obtain them. Adding them would only lower their own status. Hee, instead of using those useless items to lower our status, we might as well use these for. This way, we can build up our reputation and leave a deep impression on others. Lin E smiled faintly. If the previous auction was considered intense, then this time, with the temptation of 5 high-grade profound thunder pills, the entire scene was as crazy as a war. Chapter 48:30. 5 million. Booth 4 immediately called out impatiently. He immediately increased the bid by 2 million, showing that he was determined to win. This was not strange at all. Just now he was willing to pay 9. 5 million spirit jades for the beauty pill. So naturally he would not be the slightest bit stingy with the Thunder Xian pill. 6 million. Booth 2 immediately called out. 7 million. Booth 4 did not give in this time. For the sake of a Thunder Xian pill, Booth 2 could only offend him for once. 8 million. This time it was Booth 1 who called out. The originally passionate crowd immediately quieted down, and even Booth 2 and Booth 4 chose to remain silent. Outsiders might not dare to be sure, but the owner of Booth 1 was clear in his heart. This was without a doubt the number 1 person in Morningstar Academy. Since even he called out a bid, everyone had to take a step back. This was the least they could do out of respect. Finally, the first high-grade Thunder Xian pill fell into the hands of Booth 1. Although this price could not even be compared to the beauty pill, it could not be considered low. Everyone was actually somewhat apprehensive. This was only the first Thunder Xian pill. What if he also called out a bid for the next 4 Thunder Xian pills? Should they give in or not? They could not offend the number 1 person in Morningstar Academy just for a few Thunder Xian pills, right? But if they gave in, they would miss the opportunity to obtain the Thunder Xian pill. This was a high-grade Thunder Xian pill. Fortunately, Booth 1 had the demeanor of an expert. After calling out a bid once, he did not call out another bid, allowing everyone to simultaneously heave a sigh of relief. 8 million. When it came to the second profound thunder core, the 4th Booth once again gained the upper hand by a show of strength, raising the price to 8 million, immediately scaring a large number of people. Those who wanted to take advantage of the loopholes immediately lost their hopes. 10 million. Booth 2 did not hesitate to call out. The entire crowd was in an uproar. This had actually broken the previous record for the beauty pill. 11 million. Booth 4 continued to raise the price. 12 million. Booth number 2 coldly snorted. This time, Booth number 4 immediately lost the confidence to compete with him. At this price, even he couldn't afford it. After all, he had already spent 20 million spiritual jades. No matter how many spiritual jades he had, he couldn't afford to spend it like this. Lin Yi looked at this scene and silently laughed. From the looks of it, the owner of the second room was most likely Wei Hebei. Out of the 3 heads of the Morningstar Academy, only he had a tyrannical and overbearing style. Furthermore, he had many disciples and wasn't lacking in spirit jades. Throwing out 12 million spirit jades was nothing to him. Immediately after the 3rd Thunder Xian pill, Booth 3 was the first to call out a bid. 10 million spirit jades. Everyone's gazes subconsciously turned to VIP Room 2 and VIP Room 4. In the end, they discovered that neither of them had stepped forward to bid, and they were simultaneously maintaining their silence. At the level of 10 million spiritual jades, it would be difficult for the other VIP booths to compete with them. Even if they could gather so many spiritual jades, they would have to think it over carefully. Was it worth it to pay such a huge price to offend the 3rd booth? For the 4th Thunder Profound Core, the first person to bid was still booth number 3, and the price was still 10 million spiritual jades. Room 1 didn't say anything, and Room 2 didn't say anything either. But this time, Room 4 couldn't bear it anymore. This was already the 4th one. If this continued, he wouldn't even be able to get any leftovers. He would definitely regret it to death. 11 million. Booth number 4 immediately called out. 12 million. Booth 3 refused to budge an inch. 15 million. This time, VIP Booth 4 was practically cutting off all means of retreat. They had spent so many spirit jades previously. 15 million spirit jades was already their limit. It would be difficult to spend another 100,000. In the end, the profound Thunder Core finally fell into the hands of Booth number 4. It seemed that even Booth number 3 did not have enough spiritual jades to the point of casually using 15 million spiritual jades to bid for a profound Thunder Core. The first 4 profound Thunder Cores were all taken, and only the last one was left. It was still Booth number 3 who called out, 12 million! It was obvious that Booth number 3 was determined to win this Thunder Profound Core. Although everyone could see that 12 million was her limit, at this point, there were very few heavyweight buyers who could beat her. Booth number 4 was already out of ammunition, and booth number 1 and 2 were tacitly silent. As for the other buyers, it was not easy for them to come up with 12 million spiritual jades in such a short time. However, just when everyone thought the dust had settled, someone in the venue suddenly stood up and raised the price. 24 million! Everyone instantly went crazy, and their gazes instantly focused on this person. Even if he was in the first few VIP booths, he would at most increase the price by a few million at a time. But this person actually doubled the price in one go. This time even Lin was shocked. He looked up and down at this person. He thought that all the top characters were in the VIP booths, but he did not expect that there would be such a hidden nouveau riche in this square. Who is this person? Lin asked curiously. Central Chamber of Commerce's Morning Star branch's shopkeeper, Zhao Donglai. Honest Chai introduced. Central Chamber of Commerce? No wonder. Lin suddenly understood. Speaking of nouveau riche, the Central Chamber of Commerce was definitely a rich and imposing nouveau riche. They could casually make a few low-end technological products from the secular world and earn a lot of spiritual jades. What business could be more profitable than this in the world? 24 million spirit jades. This was simply an astronomical figure among astronomical figures, and everyone could only shut their mouths. The last Thunder Profound Core had undoubtedly fallen into the hands of Zhao Donglai. This was truly a rich and overbearing nouveau riche. Please do as you please, ah. 24 million spiritual jades. This Zhao Donglai is really bold. Honest Chai's eyes lit up. But it's also fortunate that this is the Morning Star auction. If it was any other auction, even if he has a lot of spiritual jades, I don't think he would dare to bid in public. Why? Lin asked. If he dares to be in the limelight at other places, wouldn't that be asking for trouble? But here, everything is managed by the Academy, so there's no need to be afraid of offending anyone. Moreover, the first few VIP booths are all big shots of the Academy. Even if they want to lose face, they wouldn't go looking for trouble with him, unless they're shameless. Honest Chai analyzed. Indeed, this was the logic. Everyone understood the logic of not showing off one's wealth. It was not worth it to make enemies because of this. Zhao Donglai dared to bid because he had the Central Chamber of Commerce behind him, so he was not afraid of anyone. Of course, he would bid if he wanted to. Chapter 4831. The Hong Chamber of Commerce, which was the finale, had a total turnover of 98 million. When this result was announced, everyone present was stunned. One had to know that a first-rate branch of a top-notch Chamber of Commerce wouldn't even be able to reach this figure in an entire year. Yet, this person had achieved it through a simple auction. This result was simply enviable. Even those big shots breathing had become noticeably heavier when they heard this figure. The crowd did not disperse, because Ling Yuanqing once again appeared on the stage and announced in a clear voice, As the Dean of the Morning Star Academy, I announce that from today onwards, the only supplier of the Academy will be the Hong Merchant Guild. As soon as he finished, Honest Chai jumped up in excitement. This time he really came back from the dead. In the end, it was all thanks to Lin Yi's timely arrival. However, it was not only him and the Morning Star Academy that benefited. This time, Lin Yi also earned a huge sum of money, because all the pills were provided by him. After deducting the necessary materials and the auction fees, he had earned at least 80 million spiritual jades. However, Lin Yi only smiled and did not show any excitement. After all, he did not lack spiritual jades. No matter how many spiritual jades there were, it was just a number to him. Everyone gathered around to congratulate him. Nobody knew Lin Yi, but they all knew Honest Chai. The Hong Merchant Association had made such a big splash today. Everyone knew that he would be the #1 merchant association in the future. As the branch manager, Honest Chai's status would naturally rise. They had to curry favor with him now. Just as Honest Chai was happily dealing with the crowd, a person jumped out from booth 13 and landed in front of Honest Chai. He pointed at Honest Chai's nose and shouted, "This is impossible! The Hong Merchant Association is obviously up to something." "Manager Wan, what do you mean by that?" Honest Chai looked at the person in front of him, and his expression turned cold. This person was the branch manager of the All-Access Gathering, Wan Zhongjie. Seeing the two of them going head-to-head against each other, the entire audience quietened down. Everyone looked like they were watching a good show. If Wan Zhongjie could produce any evidence, then Ling Yuanqing would probably withdraw his order. It seemed like it was still uncertain who would be the sole supplier for Morning Star Academy. "Humph. Shopkeeper Chai, you know what I mean." Wan Zhongjie sneered. He suddenly jumped out purely because he was unwilling to accept it. He had put in so much effort to get a 7th grade great revitalizing pill, and he had finally managed to suppress the aristocratic families. Victory was in sight, but who would have thought that he would be slapped in the face like a clown in front of everyone? How could he tolerate this? "Shopkeeper Wan, if you have anything to say, you better say it face to face. Do you really think that my Hong Merchant Association is easy to bully?" Honest Chai, an honest man, was enraged. "Everyone knows that your Hong Chamber of Commerce is in a mess now. I suspect that these elixirs were purchased at a high price from somewhere else at the last minute in your last struggle. I dare to confirm that these medicinal pills of yours absolutely did not come from a single supplier. It must have been pieced together." Wan Zhongjie insisted firmly. "So what?" Everyone at the side was confused. Even if the elixir didn't come from the same supplier, did it matter? So what? Humph. This kind of merchant association only knows how to buy elixirs at a high price at the last minute to put on a show. In fact, they have no long-term value to speak of. Letting this kind of merchant association be the sole supplier of Morning Star Academy, isn't this harming the Academy's disciples? Wan Zhongjie sneered. "Shopkeeper Wan is right. If you want to be the sole supplier of Morning Star Academy, then you have to convince everyone. What's the point of putting together a temporary product?" At this moment, someone in the crowd responded. Everyone turned to look and saw that it was Shopkeeper Jean of the Golden Chamber of Commerce. "That's right. Shopkeeper Chai, hurry up and explain." For example, the set of Golden Gathering nascent pills that my aristocratic families would bring out was specially refined by the same alchemist. It is our exclusive supplier, so naturally we can guarantee a stable supply. Otherwise, if we could only put together a few pills at the last minute, how would we be able to support the needs of so many disciples? Shopkeeper, how didn't miss the opportunity to speak up. Although these merchant associations were all competitors, and Shopkeeper how was just cursing Wan Zhongjie in his heart, in front of a powerful enemy like the Hong Chamber of Commerce, this could only be considered as an internal conflict. Right now, they needed to unite against the outside world and kick the Hong Chamber of Commerce while they were down. With Wan Zhongjie and the others taking the lead, The other shopkeepers of the other small merchant associations also jumped out and clamored for Chai to honestly reveal the source of the elixirs. Otherwise, the result of today's auction wouldn't count. That's impossible. The source of the elixirs is the absolute core secret of any merchant association. If it was you guys, would you so easily reveal the source of your elixirs? Shopkeeper, how? Why don't you set an example? Honest Chai retorted sarcastically. This. Shopkeeper, how didn't dare to reply. If he revealed it in front of everyone, what would he do if someone tried to poach him? The aristocratic associations don't need to bear the responsibility of supplying the entire Morningstar Academy. Of course, there's no need to reveal the source of the elixirs. However, your Hong Chamber of Commerce is related to the future of the Academy's disciples. Shouldn't you give everyone a satisfactory explanation? Wan Zhongjie sneered as he changed the topic. The crowd instantly became agitated, and the commotion became more and more intense. The situation was getting more and more out of control. Honest Chai's heart was burning with anxiety. He originally thought that it would be a happy ending. But who would have thought that the situation would suddenly change to such a state? The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. The old saying was indeed true. Silence. At this moment, Ling Yuanqing finally spoke. Everyone instantly quietened down. This principal of the Morningstar Academy was publicly recognized as the #1 person in the academy. Once he spoke, no one dared to say anything else. Principal Ling, please uphold justice. Honest Chai was instantly elated. As long as Ling Yuanqing was willing to speak, Wan Zhongjie and the others' opinions would all be in vain. Now he could sleep peacefully. Principal Ling, this matter is related to the future of the Academy's disciples. No matter how cautious we are, you cannot be soft-hearted and side with the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Wan Zhongjie and the others hurriedly said. Ling Yuanqing slowly swept his gaze across the crowd and said indifferently, letting the Hong Chamber of Commerce announce the source of the elixirs is not realistic nor reasonable. However, since everyone has doubts in their hearts, in order to clear the Hong Chamber of Commerce's name, why don't you let someone examine these elixirs? I believe they will be able to come up with a convincing conclusion. What does Shopkeeper Chai think? Chapter 4832. In fact, he was already relieved that Ling Yuanqing was willing to say this. After all, he couldn't possibly say that these pills were refined by Lin Yi. If he did that, it might cause trouble for Lin Yi, and he couldn't bear the consequences. Since you don't trust the alchemists of the commerce, let me do it. A strange-looking middle-aged man suddenly spoke, and the crowd immediately opened up a path for him. This person had green hair and a green beard, and was the head 7th-grade alchemist of the Morningstar Academy, Qing Danzi. Grandmaster Qing Danzi? Honest Chai was startled, although he had a bad premonition in his heart. Since the other party was the head alchemist of the Morningstar Academy, he naturally had the right to speak on this matter. He could only nod and say, since you're here to personally test the pills, I naturally have no problems. Good, then take out the pills first. Qing Danzi immediately ordered. Because the auction had just ended, the pills had not yet been handed over to the buyers. Very quickly, the workers gathered all the pills together and brought them out. Looking at this neat and tidy plate of pills, everyone couldn't help but swallow their saliva. No matter how these pills came to be, it didn't change the fact that each and every one of them was a rare pill. Any one of them alone was enough to make people drool. But now there was a whole plate of pills here, with a total value of more than 90 million spirit jades. It was only because of the presence of a super expert like Ling Yuanqing. Otherwise, with the temptation of 90 million spirit jades, it was hard to say what these people would do. It might even turn into a bloodbath. As long as it's a high-grade pill, especially a 6th or 7th grade pill, the alchemist will mark it with a unique divine sense mark. This is to prove that the pill was refined by the alchemist himself. Therefore, if there's no accident, all the pills here will have a divine sense mark. We just need to check if these divine sense marks were made by the same alchemist. Qing Danzi said as he swept his gaze across the crowd. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. Even Honest Chai nodded his head in agreement. This way, things would be much simpler. After all, any expert would be able to do it and not necessarily a pill refiner. This way, they wouldn't have to worry about the other party being biased towards shopkeeper Hao and the others. After all, as the chief alchemist of the academy, Master Qing Danzi, there were rumors in the streets that he had already chosen to collaborate with the aristocratic union. In particular, the Morning Star auction ceremony had been held because of his stance, so it was obvious which side he was on. After that, Qing Danzi immediately began to check the spiritual sense marks one by one. However, after he had checked all the pills, he suddenly froze and could not speak. How is it? Manager Hao and the others asked impatiently. They were waiting for Qing Danzi to give the verdict to the Hong Chamber of Commerce and invalidate the results of the auction. Qing Danzi frowned, not speaking for a long time. Beside him, Ling Yuanqing glanced at him and personally used his divine sense to examine the pills. Then, he also revealed an expression of surprise. These pills don't have any divine sense marks on them. Not even one. Everyone was in an uproar. Each and every one of them had a look of disbelief on their faces. How could there be no divine sense mark on such a high-grade pill? However, since even Ling Yuanqing said so, it meant that there really wasn't any. According to Master Qing Danzi, since high-grade pills all have their own unique marks, then the lack of divine sense marks on these pills should be considered a special mark. This should be enough to prove that they were made by the same person, right? Honest Chai sneered. Wan, Zhongjie, Manager Hao, and the others were instantly dumbfounded. They looked at each other and did not know what to say. They could only look at Qing Danzi. The suggestion to inspect the pills was not just a whim. With their many years of experience as a shopkeeper, they truly believed that these pills were put together by Honest Chai at the last minute. If not, if he really had such an amazing supply of pills, the Hong Merchant Guild would not have fallen to such a state where they were being attacked by everyone. No. At this moment, Qing Danzi's expression suddenly turned cold. He said with uncertainty, "Every single pill here is the masterpiece of an alchemist. Even if one or two don't have a divine sense mark on them, it is impossible for all of them to not have any. This is the best opportunity to stabilize the position of an alchemist. I guarantee that no alchemist will give up on this opportunity easily. To be an alchemist, one couldn't just practice hard behind closed doors alone. To put it bluntly, this was a profession that consumed a lot of spiritual jades. Almost every step of progress required a large amount of alchemy materials. Especially at the 7th level, it was an astronomical figure that was hard to estimate. It was even more exaggerated than 90 million spiritual jades. It was precisely because of this that it was impossible for a 7th grade alchemist to exist independently. Only a powerful force like the East Continent Academy could afford to support one. In order to pursue higher treatment, all alchemists would try their best to raise their status and reputation. Only then would they have the opportunity to advance further. Qing Danzi had done this himself, and all the high-level alchemists he had seen before had done the same without exception. Supreme Grade Golden Condensing Soul Pill, Superior Grade Grand Revitalizing Pill, Superior Grade Beautifying Pill, Superior Grade Profound Thunder Pill. Every single one of these pills is a supreme pill that is hard to come by even for a 7th grade alchemist. As long as you put a mark on these pills, you will undoubtedly become the chief alchemist of any golden grade academy. Who do you think would willingly give up on this opportunity? Qing Danzi glanced at Honest Chai. Facing Qing Danzi's invisible pressure, Honest Chai subconsciously took 2 steps back. The others nodded in agreement. No alchemist would not want to become the chief alchemist. Qing Danzi's words were very reasonable. But these pills truly don't have any divine sense marks on them. How do you explain this? Honest Chai braced himself and asked. It's very simple. These pills originally had divine sense marks on them, but they were purposely erased by someone. As for why they did this, I don't think I need to explain further. Qing Danzi's tone was unpredictable. Grandmaster Qing Danzi is right. Honest Chai, you look so honest on the outside, but who would have thought that you would be so cunning in the dark? In order to obtain the qualifications to become a supplier, you would even use such a despicable method. Too sinister. Wan Zhongjie, shopkeeper Hao, and the others immediately added insult to injury. You all! Honest Chai opened his mouth in grief and indignation, but not a single word came out. This Qing Danzi was obviously siding with the other merchant groups, but his words were impeccable. Even if he were to argue with him, it was obvious who the crowd would believe. Chapter 48-33. Ling Yuanqing's gaze landed on Honest Chai. Honest Chai panicked. It took him so much effort to come back from the dead. Was he going to die just like that? He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it at all. But very quickly, Honest Chai felt that something wasn't right. Although Ling Yuanqing's gaze was looking in his direction, it didn't land on him. Instead, he seemed to be sizing up Lin Yi with a pensive expression, as if he had seen him somewhere before. At this moment, Lin Yi finally walked out slowly, instantly attracting everyone's attention. He arrived in front of Qing Danzi and said, Who can erase the divine sense mark? Is it you? Or is it someone else? What? Just like Honest Chai, Qing Danzi was forced to take 2 steps back, causing everyone to be shocked. Who was this kid? The ones who reacted the most were those in room 3. Lin Yi's guess was right. The one in there was the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, and even Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were here. It's him. It's really him. Sister Xinyan, you're right. Huang Xiaotao's face was full of joy. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many people below, she would have jumped out of the box. Yes, he's actually here in the Eastern continent. Wang Xinyan was also so happy that tears welled up in her eyes. Ever since they parted in the Southern continent, she thought that she would have to wait for many years before she could see Lin Yi again. She didn't expect to see him so soon. Lin Yi had actually come to the Eastern continent. Since Lin Yi was sitting right below the stage, they'd seen him from room 3 a long time ago. It was just that Lin Yi had his back to them the whole time, and his aura had changed quite a bit after his recent increase in strength. Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao couldn't confirm their suspicions, even though he looked familiar at first. But now they finally saw his face. That's right, this was the lover of their dreams. It's him. I remember that he was only at the Golden Core stage. How did he become a nascent soul late stage? The divine nun of the East Sea could not help but become rather stunned when she heard what the 2 women said. Due to Huang Xiaotao, she still had some impression of Lin Yi. How long had it been? Even with Huang Xiaotao's powerful aptitude, she still hadn't been able to condense her nascent soul. Her senior brother was already at the late nascent soul stage. Even if he was heaven-defying, it shouldn't be this heaven-defying, right? Could it be that he, Ling Yuanqing, and the others had all misjudged him, and this kid was the real super genius? Let's not talk about the shocked reactions in booth number 3. At this moment, the atmosphere below the stage was already very tense. Qing Danzi looked coldly at Lin Yi and said, What do you mean by that? Nothing. According to what I know, existences at the level of a 7th-tier alchemist already have very powerful senses. If you want to erase their senses, you need to be a super master at the magnate realm at least. In other words, you need to be at the mountain opening stage at the very least. And it's quite difficult to erase even one. Where do you think the Hong Chamber of Commerce can find so many mountain opening stage masters to do this? Lin Yi said calmly. The Magnate Realm. This was also a brand new realm that Lin Yi learned from the ghost. It was a general classification of the great realms of strength. Simply put, from the mountain opening stage, including the earth opening stage, the sea splitting stage, and even the legendary heaven breaking stage, they all belonged to the Magnate Realm. As for the realms below the mountain opening stage, from the foundation establishment stage to the profound ascension stage, they all belonged to the heavenly path stage. According to the ghost's words, the heavenly path stage in the 5 heaven stage islands could only be regarded as entering a higher level. Only when one's strength completely stepped into the Magnate Realm would he be considered to have truly entered the ranks of the masters. Only the Magnate Realm masters could become the pillars of the various forces and compete with the heroes of the world. As soon as Lin Yi's words came out, everyone immediately quieted down. They didn't know much about the divine sense marking. Just now, when Qing Danzi said that, they felt that it was very reasonable. But now, after listening to Lin Yi's words, they couldn't help but feel that it was indeed the case. Qing Danzi's face changed. He didn't think that, at this time, someone who knew about the divine sense marking would jump out. Originally, these people present, including Ling Yuanqing, didn't know much about the divine sense marking of medicinal pills, so they could only agree with what he said. But now that Lin Yi had done this, their intentions were immediately exposed. Who are you? What qualifications does a nobody have to say this? Qing Danzi directly pointed his spear at Lin Yi. Although using his body to suppress the other party was the worst plan, there was no other choice at this time. A nobody? You can say that, but no matter what, I'm still the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association. Don't tell me I don't even have the qualifications to speak on behalf of our merchant association? Lin Yi glanced sideways at him. Such a young fellow was actually the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association? Hearing this, everyone was instantly shocked. Not only did Qing Danzi's face change, even Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but be slightly moved. However, he suddenly thought of a person. Back in the South Continent Sea, Huang Xiaotao seemed to have a senior brother who was also the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association. Moreover, this person looked somewhat familiar. Could it be that they were the same person? Everyone else looked at each other in dismay. For a top-tier merchant association like the Hong Clan Merchant Association, in terms of overall strength, it was not inferior to any of the Eastern Continent's Golden Step Academies. This young man was actually an honorary vice president. Then wouldn't that mean he was in existence on the same level as the Academy's vice dean? Seeing the disbelief on everyone's faces, Honest Chai hurriedly stood up to testify. That's right, this is our Hong Clan Merchant Association's Vice President Lin. If anyone doesn't believe me, feel free to go to the Middle Island and ask around. Everyone once again looked at each other in dismay, although they still found it hard to believe, since even the branch manager Honest Chai had testified in front of them. It naturally couldn't be false. Since you're the honorary vice president, does that mean that you're in charge of the Hong Clan Merchant Association here? All right, there's no need to talk nonsense. If you want to prove that your supply is stable, it's very simple. As long as you can take out another 5 Thunder Xian pills, I'll admit that you have the ability. Qing Danzi said with a cold face. 5 Thunder Xian pills. Lin Yi looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot and said coldly, You're going to provide the materials? It's easy for you to say that. Qing Danzi was immediately speechless. Under everyone's gaze, he couldn't help but blush. He must have lost his head from anger. How could he say such words in a moment of hot-headedness? That's right. How can the materials for the Thunder Xian pill be so easy to find? The Thunder Xian vine is a very rare treasure. Someone in the crowd said indignantly. Chapter 48:34. He did not believe Lin Yi's nonsense at all. If a brat like Lin Yi could be a seventh-grade alchemist, then what was he, who had studied for hundreds of years, worth of effort? Moreover, even if he was a seventh-grade alchemist, it was impossible to refine 10 recover pills in a day. It was impossible. We'll know who gave me the guts in a day. Lin Yi looked at him with a faint smile. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take out the materials. Prepare a room for alchemy for me. We'll see the results in a day. All right, you said it yourself. Qing Danzi immediately sent people to prepare. Manager Hao was overjoyed. The partnership with the academy was destined to fall into the hands of his Grand Union. Other than the auction venue, the first floor of the Morningstar Union had all sorts of facilities. Not only were there VIP rooms, but there were also many special rooms like the alchemy room. After the materials were prepared, Lin Yi immediately went into seclusion to refine pills. As for the others, they did not disperse. After all, it was only the first day of the Morningstar Union's auction. There would be a series of activities after that, especially the highly anticipated individual auction in a few days. Therefore, they would all stay in Morningstar City for a while, other than the disciples of the Morningstar Union. Most of the others stayed in the first floor of the Morningstar Union. It would be a waste not to watch the show. The onlookers did not disperse. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao wanted to rush down and reunite with Lin Yi immediately, but there were too many people. In the end, they were persuaded by the divine Nun of the East Sea. Since they knew that Lin Yi was in the Hong Merchant Association, it did not matter if they waited a little longer. They might as well wait for him to settle his matters first. As everyone waited, a day passed in the blink of an eye. Qing Danzi, Honest Chai, and the others waited at the door of the alchemy room, waiting for the moment the door opened. Hee, you're all here. Lin Yi opened the door and greeted everyone. How was it? Honest Chai quickly went forward. This concerned the life and death of the Morningstar branch, and he was even more nervous than Lin Yi. He was afraid that an accident would happen. After all, failure in pill refinement was a very common thing, and no matter how amazing a pill refiner was, there was no exception. Humph! Is there even a need to say it? Just look at his empty hands. Qing Danzi, shopkeeper Hao, and the others sneered. Empty-handed? Is your eyesight that bad? Find a doctor to take a good look at him. If he's sick, he has to be treated. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. With a wave of his hand, a medium-sized box suddenly appeared in his hand. After he opened it, a wave of gasps could be heard from the surroundings. Qing Danzi and the others' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Not one more, not one less. Exactly 10 grade, 7 great recover pills. Looking at everyone's expressions of disbelief, Lin Yi laughed silently. He had still hidden one of his cards. One had to know that his luck was pretty good this time. 10 sets of ingredients had been used to refine 18 great recover pills. In order to not cause too much of a commotion, he had hidden the other 8. But even so, Qing Danzi was completely dumbfounded. If these 10 great recover pills had been prepared in advance by the other party, it would have been fine. But now, they were clearly still warm and fragrant. Without a doubt, these 10 pills were of superior quality. Furthermore, they were concocted within a day. This was practically a freaking miracle. Is this the legendary Absolute Dan? Qing Danzi swallowed his saliva as he looked at Lin Yi from head to toe in disbelief. Absolute pill formation was 100% success rate. This was the realm that almost all alchemists pursued. Regardless of the grade, this was an eternal dream. Absolute pill formation. This was the first time Lin Yi had heard of this term, but after thinking about it, he understood. With a casual expression, he said, "Oh, this is very easy. What's so strange about it?" Easy. Qing Danzi almost bit his tongue off. Looking at Lin Yi as if he was looking at a monster, he said, "I'm talking about absolute pill formation. How could this be easy? I've never seen any alchemist who could do this." "Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue?" speaking up to this point, Qing Danzi suddenly froze. This person was not boasting. He had truly achieved absolute pill formation. To him, this was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Perhaps in the eyes of this person it really was child's play, seeing that Qing Danzi was suddenly dumbfounded and silent. Everyone thought that this guy was thinking about how to put pressure on the Hong Chamber of Commerce again. Even Lin Yi thought so. But when they saw what Qing Danzi did next, they were all dumbfounded. Plop! Qing Danzi suddenly knelt in front of Lin Yi. His expression became incomparably solemn and sincere as he said, "Master, please accept me as your disciple." What the hell? What kind of play is this? Not only Lin Yi was stunned. Honest Chai was stunned, Shopkeeper Hao was stunned, and everyone else was stunned. Even Ling Yuanqing's expression was a little strange. His own academy's chief alchemist suddenly kneeling in front of someone and begging to be his disciple. This was the first time he had seen something so bizarre. He was clearly scheming against the other party. Why did he suddenly change his mind? Another person who changed his face faster than flipping a book. Looking at Qing Danzi's expression, Lin Yi's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Subconsciously, he thought of Okuda Dam. Only that guy would suddenly change his mind and throw you into the sea. But this person in front of him was a little strange. He was clearly in the middle of a fight, but he suddenly knelt down, ignoring everyone's strange gazes. Qing Danzi looked at Lin Yi with a burning gaze and said carefully, "If this disciple didn't guess wrong, you must be a mystic level, first level alchemist." According to the ranks of alchemists, above the 7th level was a whole new realm. This was the legendary mystic level alchemist. Even if it was only a mystic level, first level alchemist, it was still a height that no other 7th level alchemist could reach. They could only look up to it, not be compared to it. Oh! Lin Yi looked at him with an indescribable expression. He didn't admit nor deny it on the spot. Definitely this disciple has seen many 7th level alchemists, but none of them could refine a 7th level great cyclic Dan so quickly. Not to mention 10 in a day. I haven't even heard of one in a day. Furthermore, this is an absolute success. Other than a mystic level, first level alchemist, this disciple really can't think of a second possibility. Qing Danzi said with certainty. Chapter 48:35. Qing Danzi's expression immediately turned ugly after being ridiculed by the crowd. However, it was impossible for him to give up just like that. He immediately said in a forceful tone, "Fine. Since the materials for the Thunder Xian pill cannot be gathered, I will take a step back. Your Hong Chamber of Commerce only needs to bring me 10 more great recover pills within a day. I will give you the materials. Hey, I respect you as the head alchemist of the Academy. That's why I call you Grandmaster Qing Danzi. But aren't you being too shameless?" Honest Chai couldn't take it anymore and said with righteous indignation, "This is called taking a step back? Even if the Great Rejuvenating Pill is easier to concoct than the Xian Thunder Pill, it's still a level 7 pill. Furthermore, you have to bring out 10 in a day. The difficulty is much higher. If you're trying to make things difficult, just say so." The rest of the people were also pointing at him. Taking out 10 great rejuvenation pills in one day was too easy for them. Don't forget that there were only 2 great rejuvenation pills in the entire auction today, and one of them was from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. For more information, visit www. Don't say such useless things. As long as you can bring it out, I, as the head alchemist of the Morning Star Academy, guarantee that your Hong Merchant Guild will be the only supplier. Qing Danzi sneered. When he said this, his eyes involuntarily, secretly glanced at Ling Yuanqing. He was also forced to say this. Otherwise, even if he had the guts, he would not dare to be so presumptuous in front of Ling Yuanqing. The position of the chief alchemist was transcendent, but it was not transcendent to the point where he could look down on everyone. Luckily, Ling Yuanqing didn't say anything. Instead, he calmly sat down and watched the situation unfold. Qing Danzi let out a sigh of relief. This was a tacit agreement. That's right, no matter what. I'm the Academy's most trusted head alchemist. As the Academy's dean, it's impossible for Ling Yuanqing to side with the Hong Merchant Association and not help his own people. Today, I must trample the Hong Merchant Association into the ground. Oh, are you sure you can make the decision? Lin Yi looked at Ling Yuanqing. Of course. I can also tell you that if you can do it, I'll only sell the pills I concoct to the Hong Merchant Guild. Qing Danzi said. Are you for real? Honest Chai's eyes immediately lit up. Even though he was furious at this fella, he couldn't deny that this was a genuine 7th-grade pill master. If this fella only refined pills for his Hong Merchant Association, then he would have a huge supply of high-grade pills in the future. This was something he couldn't ask for more. This was a good thing. Even though he managed to obtain a bunch of level 7 pills, thanks to Lin Yi, Honest Chai knew that Lin Yi wouldn't stay here forever. What would he do after he left? If Honest Chai could think of this, so could Lin Yi. If he could really make this Qing Danzi work with the Hong commerce, then he wouldn't have to worry about the future anymore. This was a good thing that came knocking on his door. With my status, do you think I would make empty promises in front of so many people? Qing Danzi frowned and suddenly turned his head to look at Manager Hao. Faintly he said, but I'll say the ugly words first. If you can't produce it within a day, that means your supply isn't stable enough. Although your Hong Chamber of Commerce won the auction just now, you will still have to give up your position as the sole supplier to the Hao family metropolis. Everyone finally came to a realization. After going around in a big circle, it turned out that this was Qing Danzi's true objective. He, as the head alchemist of the Academy, purposely went against the Hong Merchant Guild in order to force them to give up their position and give up their partnership to the Hao Family Association. He even skipped the all-access gathering in the middle. Wan Zhongjia's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Just now, he was the most enthusiastic one among them. He thought that as long as he could drag the Hong Merchant Guild down, the partnership would automatically fall into the hands of the all-access gathering. Who would have thought that Qing Danzi would suddenly say such a thing? Wan Zhongjia swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue when Qing Danzi shot him a cold glance. Although he was extremely unwilling, he didn't dare to go against the chief alchemist of the Academy in the territory of Morningstar City. What if he followed in the footsteps of the Hong Merchants Association and was also targeted and banned? At this time, no one was paying attention to Wan Zhongjia. There were only 2 people who were being watched, Qing Danzi and Lin Yi. This condition isn't much. You're a level 7 alchemist, right? Do you think you can refine 10 great recover pills in a day? Why don't we change it? I'll provide the materials and you can challenge me? Lin Yi suddenly said with a pout. This. Qing Danzi was at a loss for words. Outsiders might not know this, but as the chief alchemist of the Academy, he knew the difficulty of this task better than anyone else. 10 7th-grade recover pills a day was an impossible task. He had only proposed it to deliberately make things difficult for the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If it was really possible, Qing Danzi wouldn't have proposed it so confidently. After all, he wasn't an idiot. Qing Danzi didn't know how to continue. Just when everyone thought that Lin Yi would use this as an excuse to get out of the situation, he spoke again. Forget it. Give me the materials, and I'll reluctantly refine them for a fool like you. I'll let you know the foundation of the Hong Merchant Guild. What? What do you mean? You're not saying that you'll refine them, are you? Qing Danzi was stunned again. Oh, I forgot to tell you that I'm not only the honorary vice president of the Hong Merchant Group, but I'm also the chief alchemist of the Morningstar branch. I can't refine anything else, but it's not a problem for me to refine a few level 7 great recover pills, Lin Yi said indifferently. As soon as these words came out, Not only was Qing Danzi completely dumbfounded, but everyone present was also shocked. Even Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but be moved again. The honorary vice president of the Hong Merchant Guild didn't have to be very strong. In theory, as long as one made a huge contribution to the Merchant Guild, they would have a chance to get the position. So although it was rare, it wasn't too shocking. But a level 7 alchemist? How could such a young guy do it? Lin Yi had already expected everyone's shock. Anyway, his alchemy ability had already been exposed on the warship, so there was no need to continue hiding it. Moreover, it wasn't entirely a bad thing to expose this kind of thing. At least it would make people think more highly of him, and sometimes it would be more convenient for him to do things. There were pros and cons. Just a few great recover pills? Humph, how arrogant of you. Qing Danzi's face was almost the same color as his hair and eyebrows. He sneered and said, "You don't know your place, kid. Don't think that just because you have the backing of the Hong Merchant Guild, you can speak so arrogantly. How dare you belittle us, a level 7 alchemist? Who gave you such courage?" Chapter 48:30. 6. The specifications are still not enough. Are you talking about procurement, Deacon Qin Deli? After the Wei Xiaodong incident happened last time, his life was not easy. However, he had a backer at Morningstar College, so he was not taken down for questioning, but shied away from all responsibilities. It's our Hong Chamber of Commerce's fault, but this time it's Vice President Dong Hai who personally speaks out, and even he doesn't dare to interfere. After all, he has a criminal record before. Chai Lauscher explained. Well, that's good. I've worked hard for you during this period. Lin Yi patted Chai Lauscher's shoulder in relief. After figuring out the cause and effect, he felt much more relaxed. After all, if Chai Lauscher really rebelled, even if he could clean up his family, he won't feel good, because it only means that I was wrong in the first place. No matter where I am, I owe it to you and Vice President Hong's care to be where I am today. I can't say whether it's hard work or not. It's all deserved. Seeing that Lin Yi finally believed in himself, Chai Lauscher finally breathed a sigh of relief. Work hard. You should understand what kind of people Mr. Hong and I are. We will not treat our own people badly. Lin Yi encouraged him warmly. Although it is difficult for people like Chai Lauscher to be put to great use, in the Chamber of Commerce, he does have a unique side, and as long as he can guarantee his loyalty, he might as well cultivate it. Thank you for your love. I will be so heartbroken that I will die. Chai Lauscher said immediately and politely. He is honest and cowardly, but he is not a fool. At this time, he must show his loyalty. Otherwise, he should be a little more reserved. It is very likely that your future will be missed in one fell swoop. Lin Yi chuckled when he saw this, and then he remembered the notice he saw on the street before and asked, "By the way, do you know about the Morningstar auction ceremony?" "I know. This is the highest level auction event in Morningstar City. It is held from time to time. The last time seems to have been 5 years ago." Chai Lauscher nodded and then asked, "Are you interested?" "Yes, I really want to see it, but I don't know what the specific rules are." Lin Yi nodded. Everyone knows this rule. Anyone who is a disciple of Morningstar College can participate, and all large chambers of commerce here also have corresponding quotas. Like our Hong Chamber of Commerce, you can recommend your own people or other familiar casual cultivators to participate. If you want to participate, just use our own quota, right? Chai Lauscher immediately suggested, "Okay, I'll leave this matter to you to arrange." Lin Yi smiled. He wanted to participate in this auction ceremony purely on a whim. But since all the disciples of Morningstar Academy can participate, there might be a chance to meet directly. Where are Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao? While the two were talking, someone outside the door suddenly called softly, "Shopkeeper, the order has been opened. Do you want to take a look at it now?" Chai Lauscher looked at Lin Yi inquiringly after hearing this. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. "It doesn't matter. If you have anything to do, just go ahead and do it. Don't worry about me." Chai nodded honestly and said directly to the door, "Old Chui, just come in. There are no outsiders inside." As he finished speaking, a middle-aged man with a long beard pushed open the door and walked in. Lin Yi glanced at him and felt vaguely familiar. After thinking for a moment, he finally remembered that this was not someone from the Weihu branch. After he and Hong Zhong helped Chai Laoshe become the treasurer of the Weihu branch, in order to facilitate the control of the situation, they also asked Chai Laoshe to choose a person to be the deputy treasurer of the branch. Chai Laoshe recommended this person, named Cui Mingshan. After Cui Mingshan came in, he looked at Lin Yi. He was stunned for a moment before he realized what was happening. He quickly raised his hands in greeting and said, "Cui Mingshan has met Vice President Lin." "Haha, why are you here too?" Lin Yi asked with a smile. He said, although he has not had much contact with him, Cui Mingshan can be regarded as one of his own and Hong Zhong's people in the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In response to Vice President Lin, my subordinates took the initiative to apply for transfer after hearing what happened to shopkeeper Chai. Otherwise, when the emperor and his courtiers leave, the next subordinate will be left behind, and life will definitely be difficult. Cui Mingshan glanced at Chai Laoshe with a wry smile. This is a living example. At the Weihu branch, before Wei Xiaodong came, he was the glorious deputy shopkeeper. As a result, Wei Xiaodong was kicked aside as soon as he arrived and became a complete idler. If I hadn't been lucky enough to meet Lin Yi, a nobleman, I might have been sitting on the bench for the rest of my life. Actually, Lao Cui is also very lucky. Although the transfer of deputy shopkeeper does not need to go through all the senior management of the headquarters. In addition to the senior management's push behind it, there must also be corresponding vacancies. And at that time, the deputy manager of the Morning Star branch, the shopkeeper, applied to be transferred back to the Zhongdao headquarters early because of poor performance. He would rather go back to work as a sinecure than to be miserable here, so he happened to be freed up for Lao Cui. Chai Laoshe added with a smile, "That's right. The two of you can take care of each other when you come together, and you can control the situation better. The errands of the branch here are just a piece of cake for other people, but it is a rare opportunity for you too. Work hard in the future, and there will be success. You can come to Mr. Hong and I at any time if you have difficulties. We are all our own people, and we will not sit idly by." Lin Yi nodded. Originally, neither Chai Laoshe nor Cui Mingshan could have been transferred to Dongzhou on equal terms, but after Wei Xiaodong and the subsequent series of events, they were pushed to their current positions and promoted invisibly. This kind of successful experience cannot be copied by others, even if they want to. As the saying goes, times make heroes. Thank you, Vice President Lin, for your care. Cui Mingshan was immediately overjoyed. Like Chai Laoshe, he had no backing. Although they were both members of Lin Yi and Hong Zhong's group, before that he could only be regarded as Chai Laoshe's follower. Now, finally, he was officially recognized by Lin Yi, which was something he had always dreamed of. "Okay, Lao Cui, let's talk about old times later. Did you just say that the order was ready?" Chai asked honestly. "Yes, this is the auction item for this auction ceremony. Please take a look at it, the shopkeeper." Cui Mingshan immediately handed over a list. Although this was the core secret of the Chamber of Commerce, it could easily be used by competitors once it was leaked. But Lin Yi was in there. He is clearly not an outsider in his eyes, so there is no need to hide anything. Lin Yi took care of himself and sat aside to drink tea. Chai Laoshe took the order and glanced at it. His brows suddenly furrowed, and he didn't look at it for a long time. After a long silence, Chai Laoshe shook his head and sighed. "This specification is still not enough. Can't we find another way to get some scarce goods? This auction is very important to our branch, and the competitors from other chambers of commerce are waiting for us. There is no room for mistakes." Chapter 48:37. Although this was not a rare thing, there were many alchemists who were stuck at the 7th level, let alone 100 years. Even if they spent their entire lives, they would not be able to advance an inch, and even more alchemists could not even touch the threshold of the 7th level. To be able to reach the level of Qing Danzi was already very rare, but Qing Danzi was not willing to give up. Back then, he was a super genius in alchemy. In just a few decades, he rose all the way to the 6th level, and then successfully reached the 7th level before the age of 100. At that time, he was famous and shocked the world of alchemy. However, just when everyone, including himself, thought that he would undoubtedly become the next profound stage alchemist, he suddenly stopped moving, and he was stuck for more than 200 years. Until today, very few people in the alchemy world mentioned his name, and even if they knew, they would only say that he was lost in the crowd. It had been 200 years, and Qing Danzi's spirit was almost completely gone. He'd thought that this was the end of his path, and that he wouldn't be able to take another step forward. Who would have thought that he'd run into Lin Yi, a man who could make 10 high-class great recovery pills in one day, a man who had the secret to making them? Qing Danzi's heart suddenly lit up with hope. Compared with alchemy, which he regarded as his life, everything else was fleeting. Even his dignity and pride could be thrown aside. In order to go further, he directly wanted to be apprenticed to Lin Yi on the spot. Although he also knew that it would not be so easy, and what he had done before had completely offended Lin Yi, unless there was a hole in Lin Yi's brain. Otherwise it would be impossible for Lin Yi to accept him so easily. But he didn't mind. No matter what, he had to try hard, and what if he could succeed? After all, for him there was no such chance. It was not so easy to meet a legendary alchemist with absolute success. Moreover, he was the dignified chief alchemist of the college, and if he abandoned his dignity in public, Lin Yi would take the face of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce into account. Maybe he would agree. Listening to Qing Danzi's words, Lin Yi couldn't help but be stunned for a while. He was actually regarded as the legendary first-level mystic stage. This person's imagination was really big. I don't have much to teach you. The path of alchemy is purely taught by the master, and it depends on the individual. You are a level 7 alchemist, after all. You should know this very well, Lin Yi said after a moment of hesitation. Although it was not a bad thing to accept such a chief alchemist disciple, Lin Yi had always relied on the divine armament cauldron for alchemy. What could he teach such a disciple? He couldn't possibly lend the divine pesticide cauldron to him, right? Disciple does not ask master to impart too many esoteric secrets to me. I only ask that master can give me a few pointers and share some of your alchemy experiences. That would be enough for me. I dare not ask for more. Qing Danzi looked at Lin Yi with eager eyes. Of course, he knew what Lin Yi was talking about. In fact, he didn't need Lin Yi to teach him systematically. He didn't need it because, at his level, he had already formed his own style. Even if he was taught from the beginning, it would be useless. However, most of the time, what stopped him wasn't a systematic problem, but a seemingly insignificant one. At this time, it often only needed a little pointers from an expert to make a big difference. Looking at the other party's extremely sincere expression, Lin Yi couldn't help but be moved. He thought for a moment and said, "Well, I can give you a few pointers, but according to the previous bet, from now on, the alchemy refined by Qing Danzi would be handed over to the Hong Chamber of Commerce." Because of this, Lin Yi didn't mind giving him a few pointers. However, before he finished speaking, Lin Yi originally wanted to say that he would accept him as a disciple. As a result, he didn't expect that with a plop, Qing Danzi would directly kneel down again. Disciple Qing Danzi pays respect to master. Qing Danzi immediately shouted excitedly. He hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground to pay respect to his master, forcibly holding back Lin Yi's next words. The surrounding crowd immediately went into an uproar. The first time Qing Danzi knelt down, they could still say that this fellow was acting strangely, but now he did it again. This could only mean one thing. This fellow was definitely serious. Lin Yi speechlessly looked at the kneeling Qing Danzi in front of him. What's done can't be undone. He was going to have a disciple for no reason. and it was the chief alchemist of the Morning Star Academy as his disciple. If this news were to spread, it would be too awesome. All right, you can get up first. Lin, he could only stretch out his hand to help Qing Danzi up. Although this wasn't part of his plan, it wasn't a bad thing. At least he got a big backer for honest chai, and with this disciple staying in the Morning Star Academy, he could take care of Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. It wasn't a bad thing. Shopkeeper Hao and the others sat on the ground with stiff expressions. Now that things had developed to this point, there was no longer any suspense in the auction. Qing Danzi was their greatest backer, but now their pillar of support had turned to the other side, and he had even knelt down and begged to become Lin Yi's disciple. What the hell were they supposed to do? The shopkeepers were extremely unwilling to accept this, but there was nothing they could do. The situation was against their will. What they could foresee was that with a powerful backer like Qing Danzi, no other Hong merchant guild in Morning Star City would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. It was even more impossible for them to get an opportunity like today to kick them when they were down, because no one dared to offend the Hong Merchant Guild. That was equivalent to offending the Morning Star Academy. However, while this result was a tragedy for shopkeeper Hao and the others, it was a joyous occasion for everyone else. It wasn't just Honest Chai and the others. Even Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, who were still in the third room, were extremely excited. As the two girls cheered, the divine nun of the East Sea was shocked. Her gaze moved back and forth between Lin Yi and Qing Danzi as she shook her head speechlessly. It was not just her. The other heavyweights of the Morning Star Academy, including Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei, also stared at Lin Yi blankly. Although they did not know Lin Yi's identity a long time ago, like the divine nun of the East Sea, he was still a founding heavyweight after all. As long as they had the slightest impression of him, even if they could not recall it in the beginning, they would be able to recall it after some time. Right now, they could all remember where they had seen Lin Yi before. Wasn't this the guy they had planned on forcefully taking in as a disciple back then? Back in the sea region of the South Continent, during the first public selection in Jinduan City, Huang Xiaotao had been taken in by the divine nun of the East Sea, while Lin Yi had managed to get away by hiding the nature of his spiritual root. Afterwards, they met again in Y City, and under the advice of the purchasing envoy Qin Deli, the three heavyweights personally went to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency in order to take in Lin Yi, but they did not succeed in the end. Chapter 4838. This was not just because his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. More importantly, this guy's identity was just too frightening. Not only was he the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, but he had also become Qing Danzi's master. In terms of identity alone, Lin Yi was at least on the same level as the three heavyweights of the Morning Star Academy. He might even be a level higher than them. After all, Qing Danzi was the chief alchemist of the academy, and his status was not much lower than the three heavyweights. Yet, Lin Yi had actually become Qing Danzi's master. Just thinking about this was enough to make one faint. However, although it sounded strange, the cultivation world was still a place where strength was respected. No matter what aspect you were extraordinary in, as long as you could reach a certain level of strength, you would definitely receive the respect of the world. The path of alchemy was the same. With Lin Yi's current strength, he was naturally far from being on the same level as the three heavyweights. However, if he really was a legendary profound tier, first-level alchemist, like Qing Danzi had said, then it would not be as simple as being on the same level as them. He might even be a level higher than them. Hee, what an interesting young man. Ling Yuanqing glanced deeply at Lin Yi from within the crowd, then turned around and walked out of the first floor of the Morning Star Academy. There was no need for him, the dean, to stand out and say anything. Without a doubt, the Hong Chamber of Commerce would be the academy's only supplier in the future. Dean, you actually let that kid fool you back then. Don't you feel a little regretful? Wei Hebei suddenly appeared behind Ling Yuanqing. He turned around with a strange expression to look at Lin Yi in the crowd behind him. This was actually what he was thinking. In terms of thirst for a genius disciple, he, Wei Hebei, was the one with the greatest desire among the three heavyweights. In the end, he discovered that such a heaven-defying young man had slipped through his fingers. Right now, he was so regretful that his intestines were turning green. It's too late for regrets now. He's on equal footing with the two of you right now. If you still want him to become your disciple, he'll become a laughingstock if this gets out. At the very least, Qing Danzi's expression will be very interesting. Before they knew it, the divine nun of the East Sea had also appeared before them. Beside her were Wang Xingyan and Huang Xiaotao, who constantly glanced back. From the moment they discovered Lin Yi, they were eager to reunite with Lin Yi. It was just a pity that there were far too many people here, so the divine nun of the East Sea finally persuaded them to stop. At this moment, there was only one thing that the two girls wanted to do the most. That was to hurry back to the academy, then sneak off to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to see Lin Yi. Hearing what the divine nun of the East Sea said, Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei could not help but smile wryly at one another. They could only look at Huang Xiaotao. Xiaotao, oh Xiaotao, why didn't you remind me back then? Wouldn't it have been better to let your senior brother join the academy as well? With his talent and strength, his treatment would definitely be amazing. Sai, once Lin Yi joined, not only would their academy gain another genius disciple, but more importantly, they would gain a supreme alchemist who was suspected to be at the first level of the profound level. The benefits of this were immeasurable, but unfortunately it was too late to say anything now. Uncle Master, this is my senior brother's decision. I can't interfere. Huang Xiaotao stuck out her tongue and looked at Wang Xingyan with a smile. The passers-by all gave way to them and watched the three heavyweights of the academy leave. On the other side, after the commotion of the auction on the first floor of the Morning Star Pavilion came to a dramatic end, Qing Danzi immediately suggested, "Master, do you want to go to our academy to take a look? The scenery inside is quite nice. You can also give me some pointers on the alchemy room. How about that?" "That's fine." Lin immediately nodded. He was still worrying about how he could sneak into the academy and meet Wang Xingyan and Huang Xiaotao. Qing Danzi's suggestion was exactly what he wanted. Honest Chai didn't say anything else. After handing over all the matters on hand to Cui Mingshan, he hurriedly accompanied Lin Yi and Qing Danzi. The following auction had nothing to do with the Chamber of Commerce anymore. The most important thing for him now was to accompany Lin Yi well. At the same time, he wanted to build a good relationship with Qing Danzi, his future alchemist. After all, after Lin Yi left, he would have to rely on Qing Danzi to provide high-grade pills. Under the gaze of the crowd, Qing Danzi personally led the way for Lin Yi to the Morning Star Academy. Having just become Lin Yi's disciple, he was overwhelmed with emotions. He wanted to perform well in front of Lin Yi and think of ways to please him. Qing Danzi took the shortcut. As a result, when they arrived at the gates of the Morning Star Academy, they bumped into Ling Yuanqing's group. Qing Danzi was surprised and hurriedly introduced them to Lin Yi. He thought that Lin Yi only knew Ling Yuanqing and didn't know that the two people beside him were the other two giants of the Morning Star Academy. As they listened to Qing Danzi's introduction, Ling Yuanqing and the others looked at each other. Speak of the devil and the devil appears. On the way here, they had been talking about Lin Yi and didn't expect to bump into him again. This time they were really dumbfounded and didn't know what to say. However, Lin Yi didn't listen to him at all. His gaze landed on the two women behind the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. At the same time, Wang Xingyan and Huang Xiaotao also looked at him with joy. They were so happy that tears of joy rolled down their cheeks. Although, for cultivators, Lin Yi hadn't been separated from them for a long time. Longing was like an illness. The deeper the feelings, the deeper the illness. When it came to Lin Yi and his female friends, it could only be said that the illness was beyond cure. Thousands of words could only be said in this silent exchange of gazes. Young hero Lin, we meet again. Ling Yuanqing finally opened his mouth after a moment of silence. As the #1 person in the Morningstar Academy, it was rare for him to greet someone with such a tone, especially someone as young as Lin Yi. However, with Lin Yi's qualifications, it was completely worth it for him to treat him differently. Senior Ling, Senior Wei, Senior Eastern Sea, long time no see. Lin Yi nodded with a smile. At this time, Huang Xiaodao's eyes moved. She couldn't help but want to go over and hug Lin Yi. But because Wang Xinyan was standing next to her, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. After all, Wang Xinyan was ranked before her, and as the younger sister, she couldn't always be ahead of her older sister. In this regard, Huang Xiaotao was a woman with a very traditional concept of seniority. Wang Xinyan couldn't help but laugh and pinch her hand. The two of them had been together for so long, and they already understood each other very well. She could tell what Huang Xiaotao was thinking with just a glance. There was still a tacit understanding between sisters. Huang Xiaotao blushed a little. Under everyone's gaze, she didn't dare to be too bold. She could only suppress the surging emotions in her heart and walk up to Lin Yi. Her voice trembled as she said, "Senior Lin." Chapter 48-39. Qing Danzi looked back and forth between Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao in disbelief. He asked in surprise, What did you call my master? He's your senior brother? You didn't expect this, did you? Lin Yi is my disciple senior brother. They were all disciples of the 3 great pavilions in the north. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea couldn't help but laugh. Qing Danzi, you always want to suppress me, but now you don't have to think about it. You've already become my grand disciple. Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei couldn't help but smile. No matter which academy in the Eastern continent, the chief alchemist position was always at the top, especially in Soaring Cloud Academy, where there was a relatively strong chief alchemist. It was normal for one to become the second-ranked big shot of the academy. In Morningstar Academy, the position of the 3 giants of the academy was unshakable because of their strength. However, Qing Danzi was not the kind of person who was willing to submit to others. It was impossible for him to surpass the Dean Ling Yuanqing, and it was also impossible for him to surpass the Vice Dean Wei Hebei, who had many disciples. The only target left was the solitary divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Although she was the Vice Dean, she rarely asked about the Academy's affairs. Moreover, she only had 2 direct disciples, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. In addition to her strength, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea was the easiest to surpass. In fact, Qing Danzi always had the opportunity to surpass her, and public opinion had already vaguely positioned him as the 3rd most powerful person in the academy. But now, with such a thing happening, it was unlikely. Qing Danzi smiled bitterly and shook his head. How could this be? This is what it means to be unpredictable. Qing Danzi, you should just accept your fate. Ha ha! Wei Hebei laughed. All right, but this kind of thing doesn't matter. For me, alchemy is the most important thing. Qing Danzi laughed. Compared to the Academy's status and fame, he only cared about alchemy. As long as he could make progress in alchemy, he was willing to give up everything. Ling Yuanqing and the others smiled at each other. A chief alchemist completely immersed in alchemy was a good thing for the academy. Let me reintroduce you. Lin Yi nodded to the 2 girls with a smile and introduced, This is my junior sister Huang Xiaotao from the North Island, and this is my deskmate Wang Xinyan. What do you mean by deskmate? Qing Danzi was stunned once again. It wasn't just him. Even Ling Yuanqing and the others had blank expressions on their faces. In particular, the divine nun of the East Sea was even more shocked. She had always believed that only Huang Xiaotao was connected to Lin Yi among her disciples. She had never thought that even Wang Xinyan was connected to Lin Yi like that. However, what did deskmate mean? "Master Qing Danzi, don't listen to him," Xin Yan said, blushing as she gave Lin Yi a reproachful look. Lin Yi's heart warmed up at that point. It didn't matter how many times he looked at that cute face of hers. He'd never get tired of it. It was just like when they first met on the train. No, I'm not a master." Qing Danzi hurriedly waved his hands and corrected himself. "Since you're my master's desk mate, then you're my senior. Your disciple greets desk mate." Xin Yan didn't know what to say to that, and the others all had strange expressions on their faces as well. This Qing Danzi guy really knew how to lower himself. It was one thing for him to be Lin Yi's disciple, but now he was calling Xin Yan master. What was he going to call Ling Yuanqing and the others? Lin Yi was smiling as well. He hadn't expected this Qing Danzi to be such a clown. After all, he was a 7th-rank alchemist, and it was rare to see someone as open as him. Originally, everyone was still a little stiff because of their status. After all, Ling Yuanqing and the others were the big shots of the academy, and they couldn't possibly put down their pride in front of the juniors. However, after this incident, the atmosphere became much livelier, and a rare burst of laughter could be heard, attracting the attention of the students passing by. However, among the crowd, only honest Chai couldn't put down his pride. With his cautious personality, it was difficult for him to relax in front of Ling Yuanqing and the others. "Shopkeeper Chai, why don't you return to the Hong Merchant Guild first? I'll look for you later," Lin Yi instructed. Okay, then I'll take my leave first." Honest Chai heaved a sigh of relief. Being in the same place as so many big shots was really stressful, not to mention talking and laughing. It was so stressful that he couldn't breathe. However, after leaving the Morning Star Academy and returning to the business district, Honest Chai raised his head high again. After all, he was now representing the Hong Merchant Guild, the future #1 merchant guild in Morning Star City. After watching Honest Chai leave, Lin Yi and the others entered the Morning Star Academy. Thinking back to the time when he first came to Morning Star City, Lin Yi was still having a headache about how to enter the Morning Star Academy. Now that he had a disciple like Qing Danzi, everything became much easier. Ling Yuanqing and the other big shots of the academy all treated Lin Yi differently. As for the other students, they only dared to watch from afar. They didn't even dare to go near, in case they made the big shots unhappy. Along the way, everyone finally put aside the issue of seniority caused by Qing Danzi and decided to talk about their own matters. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to differentiate clearly. Lin Yi was Huang Xiaotao's senior brother and Qing Danzi's master, while Huang Xiaotao was the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. It was a complete mess. They wouldn't be able to sort out the seniority issue in their next lives. They could only go according to the seniority they were used to. After walking together for a while, they parted ways very quickly. Lin Yi was dragged by Qing Danzi to his alchemy room. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao originally wanted to follow, but Lin Yi persuaded them to go back with the divine nun of the Eastern Sea first. After all, Lin Yi would still go find them after he left Qing Danzi's place. As the chief alchemist of the academy, Qing Danzi's residence was naturally in the best part of the academy. Not only was the scenery beautiful, but the spiritual qi was also overwhelming. Following Qing Danzi into his alchemy room, Lin Yi's eyes lit up. It was an extremely intricately designed seclusion room. It was a place specially used for alchemy. Next to it was a huge storeroom, which stored all sorts of rare materials. As expected of the chief alchemist of the academy, the size of this storeroom seems to be even more exaggerated than my own. Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 4840. After all, this kind of thing needed to be accumulated bit by bit, and it was not something that could be made up for with just a few fortuitous encounters. Master, what do you think of this disciple's spirit medicine storehouse? Qing Danzi showed Lin Yi around, his face full of pride. Very good. It is the best I have ever seen. Lin Yi nodded. Is that so? Qing Danzi was pleasantly surprised. He thought that with Lin Yi's alchemy realm, he must have seen countless super alchemists. Little did he know that apart from his own, Lin Yi had never seen anyone else's spirit medicine storehouse. It was not a lie to say that his was the best. Lin Yi smiled faintly and didn't expose him. In truth, Qing Danzi was proud to have such a huge storage of elixirs. He had all the essentials and rare elixirs he could think of, and had almost everything he could think of. If one had to nitpick, it would be the lack of a few heaven and earth treasures similar to the Thunder Xian Rot Tan. However, these rare treasures could only be found by chance. They could not be obtained just because one wanted to, and one needed great luck. Did it take a long time? Lin Yi asked with a smile. 300 years. Qing Danzi looked at his painstakingly, and then turned to Lin Yi and said, The spirit medicines here have been systematically collected since I was 10 years old. I have persisted until today without a break. 10 years old? Lin Yi was surprised. Most people at this age were still playing with mud. He did not expect that this guy had already begun to do such advanced things. Yes, master, you don't need to be surprised. I come from an alchemy family. Any family member with a little bit of aptitude will be taught alchemy from the age of 10. Distinguishing and accumulating spirit medicines is the first lesson, Qing Danzi explained. I see. Lin Yi nodded. This was what it meant to win at the starting line. If that's the case, your family shouldn't be lacking in skilled refiners, right? Is there a need to ask me to be your master? Lin Yi asked curiously. Master, you misunderstand. Although my family is an alchemy aristocratic family, it had already declined long before I was born. Not only was it no longer glorious, but it was also constantly bullied and humiliated. Being able to maintain the title of an alchemy aristocratic family was purely a fluke. Previously, it had always been a precarious situation. It was only after I became a 7th-tier alchemist that things changed slightly. Every family has its own difficulties. Lin Yi looked at Qing Danzi sympathetically. After this disciple became a 7th-grade alchemist. Although the situation was temporarily stabilized, the situation is still not optimistic because in order to stabilize the name of an alchemy family, the family must have at least 2 7th-grade alchemists. But our Qing family only has 1 disciple. The other disciples don't even have a 6th-grade alchemist, let alone a 7th-grade alchemist. Qing Danzi said bitterly, There's such a thing? What about you? Lin Yi asked, because when I was promoted to a 7th-level alchemist, I was still somewhat famous in the alchemy world. The other families were afraid of me and didn't dare to make things too difficult for me. Otherwise, when I advance to the 1st level of the mystic level, they won't be able to bear the consequences. So they made an exception and gave us a deadline of 200 years. As long as I advance to the 1st level of the mystic level within 200 years, I can continue to keep the title of an alchemy family. Otherwise, I will be removed from the list and lose all the resources that belong to an alchemy family. Qing Danzi paused here and smiled bitterly. From the time I became a 7th-grade alchemist until now, 200 years have passed. It won't be long before the deadline arrives. This was the real reason why he didn't hesitate to give up his dignity and beg to become Lin Yi's disciple. For a 7th-level alchemist, not making any progress in 200 years wasn't a particularly bad thing. If it wasn't for this, Qing Danzi could have continued to explore on his own. But seeing that the deadline was approaching, if he didn't work hard to do something, the Qing family would be removed from the list. Once they lost the various resources that belonged to an alchemy family, it would be impossible for them to return to the ranks. So, you became my disciple in order to break through to the 1st level of the mystic level. Lin Yi looked at Qing Danzi strangely. This guy was really desperate. Not to mention that he wasn't a legendary mystic level alchemist. Even if he was, it was impossible for him to advance to the mystic level in such a short period of time. No, disciple is far from the top of the 7th level alchemists. How could I dare to think about the first level of the mystic level? Qing Danzi shook his head repeatedly. Then why are you doing this? Lin Yi asked strangely. The only thing disciple can do now is to go one step further. 7th level alchemists are also divided into different levels. Disciple only wants to be the first level so that when those people come to remove my name, I can at least have some leeway. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't even have the chance to bargain. Qing Danzi smiled bitterly. In fact, there was one more thing he didn't dare to say. That was if he could win over a first level, mystic level honorary elder, he could still retain the name of an alchemy family. But he had just forced Lin Yi to become his family's elder. How could he force Lin Yi to become his family's elder? Oh, then what level do you think you are now among the 7th level alchemists? Lin Yi asked with great interest. Barely 2nd level. Qing Danzi thought for a moment and explained. With disciples' current ability, I can almost refine all 7th level dawn, and I can often refine high-quality dawn. But there is a very terrible problem, and that is I can't guarantee success every time. As for absolute success like master, I can't even think about it. What he meant by success every time was not 100% success rate, but a successful core formation every time. For the vast majority of alchemists, even if they could only refine 1 pill out of 10 sets of ingredients, it would still be considered a success. Is that so? Then have you thought of any solution? Lin Yi asked while rubbing his chin. Because of the existence of the god's armament cauldron, his alchemy has always been overproduced. No matter how bad it was, he could still achieve a near 100% success rate. Unless the level of the dawn was far beyond his ability, then the alchemy would fail. But as Qing Danzi said, Lin Yi had never encountered a situation like this before. He obviously had this ability, so why did he often fail? Chapter 48-41. Lin Yi's eyes lit up and quickly asked, and the result? I stayed in Middle Island for 3 years, and I didn't even get to see Master Zhang once. I couldn't take it anymore, so I had to go back to the school first. Otherwise, I might not be able to keep my position as the head refiner. Qing Danzi sighed depressed. The actions of an expert are naturally secretive. Lin Yi smiled sympathetically. Back then, he'd purposely stayed in Nakajima just to see Zhang Liju, but it was to no avail. The only difference was that he didn't have to wait 3 years like Qing Danzi. It's my regret that I didn't get to see Master Zhang Liju, but now that you're here, it's the same for me to ask for your advice, Qing Danzi said excitedly. Lin Yi smiled awkwardly. How could he compare himself to a cheap master like Zhang Liju? Zhang Liju could see the problem with one look, but he might not be able to see the crux of the problem. After all, in terms of elixir-making experience, even Qing Danzi was more experienced than him, let alone Zhang Liju, a Dan god. How about this? Tell me the problems you've encountered in detail. I'll help you think about it when I get back. Lin Yi said, Yes, thank you, master. Qing Danzi was overjoyed and immediately told Lin Yi about his problem from beginning to end. He was afraid that Lin Yi wouldn't remember it, so he wrote it down on a piece of paper and gave it to Lin Yi. Only then did he feel relieved. Okay, then I'll go back first. I'll let you know when I come up with a solution. Alchemy can't be rushed. Take it slow, Lin Yi nodded. Yes, I'll remember your words, master. In front of Lin Yi, Qing Danzi didn't have the arrogance of a head refiner at all. In fact, he was even more respectful than a new disciple. After all, Lin Yi was the legendary first-level mystic in his heart. Alchemy didn't care about seniority, and age was often not an advantage, but a disadvantage that couldn't be made up for. This was because when a refiner reached a certain age, their thoughts would become rigid, and it would be hard for them to make any huge breakthroughs. Those who could truly become a mystic refiner were all super geniuses, just like Zhang Liju. As for the so-called late bloomers, although it wasn't that there weren't any of them, there weren't many of them. After saying a few words of encouragement, Lin Yi left his residence under Qing Danzi's grateful and respectful farewell. The sky had already darkened, but the lights in Morning Star Academy were still brightly lit. All sorts of expensive fluorescent stones could be found everywhere, scattered on both sides of the road. This was practically the sky-class island version of the street lamps. Qing Danzi lived in the Qingdan Pavilion, and the godly nun of East Sea lived in the Donghai Pavilion. Since they were both elders of the school, the distance between them wasn't too far. After passing through a small path in the forest, it took less than half an hour for Lin Yi to reach the entrance of the Donghai Pavilion. Under normal circumstances, teachers and students didn't live together, and each had their own residences. Even direct disciples didn't have the privilege of entering the Donghai Pavilion. However, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea only had 2 direct disciples, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. She was always afraid of dropping them, and she was afraid of melting them. Plus, they were easily coveted girls. Of course, she couldn't bear to let them live alone outside, so the 3 of them always lived together. Before Lin Yi could activate the protection circle, the door suddenly opened, and a serious-looking old woman walked out. "Are you Master Lin? The 2 ladies have been waiting for you for a long time. Please follow me." Lin Yi paused for a moment, then quickly nodded. "All right, thank you." He didn't know where this old woman came from, but although she looked like an ordinary servant, her aura was hidden, and the pressure she gave Lin Yi was even stronger than that of the West Mountain powerhouses he'd met on the way here. How could such an expert be just a servant? The old woman didn't say anything and brought Lin Yi to a courtyard after a few turns. The ground was covered with all sorts of fluorescent stones, and it made the already quiet night even more beautiful. In the middle was a simple pavilion where Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were chatting. "Lin Yi, you're finally here." The 2 girls' eyes lit up when they saw Lin Yi. There weren't as many people as there were during the day, and they couldn't care less about their modesty anymore as they rushed into Lin Yi's arms like pigeons. With one hand holding Wang Xinyan and the other around Huang Xiaotao, Lin Yi would be the envy of every man in the world. This was what it meant to be a dreamlike winner in life. Haha, why do I get the feeling that you too are getting fatter? Lin Yi was in a good mood as he teased. The 2 girls didn't look any different from before, still slim and slender, but he could feel the difference when he hugged them in his arms. They were much more voluptuous now. What? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao blushed at the same time as they slapped Lin Yi's palms. No matter what kind of girl they were, their weight was always one of their biggest concerns. Lin Yi laughed heartily. He didn't think that getting fatter was a bad thing at all. On the contrary, if the 2 girls were as skinny as they were the first time he met Wang Xinyan, then he'd be worried that something was wrong with them. Being a bit fatter was actually a good thing. It was still pleasing to the eye, and it was more comfortable to hold. "Oh, right. Are you and Donghai's seniors the only ones living here?" Lin Yi asked. He hadn't seen anyone else on the way here other than the old grandma. "Yeah." "Other than us and Master. There's only the deaf grandma who brought you here." Wang Xinyan nodded. "Grandma Rong?" Lin Yi jumped in shock. "What's going on? Am I in the wrong place? Since when did you 2 become Princess Rong?" Huang Xiaotao didn't get the joke, but Wang Xinyan couldn't help but laugh. "It's not an easy Rong, it's long deafness. Didn't you notice that the deaf grandma can't hear people talking?" "Ah, that's true." Lin Yi rubbed his nose, speechless. The other person hadn't paid any attention to him other than the first sentence. He'd thought that she was just being serious, but it turned out that she was a deaf grandma. Chapter 48-42. Tagging along? Is there someone here looking for trouble? Lin Yi's expression changed. That's rare. With Xiao Tao and my status, as well as master's reputation, normal students would only dare to watch from afar. No one would dare to bully us. But the East Continent has always been full of weirdos, and there are always some toads among them. It's not convenient for Master to scare them off himself. So the deaf nanny took over. Every time she shows up, she scares away a bunch of people, Wang Xinyan said with a smile. Hee, so you're saying that the deaf nanny stole my task. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. He was the school beauty's bodyguard, and Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were undoubtedly the school's beauties. They needed someone to protect them, and he wasn't here. Fortunately, the deaf nanny was here. So you have to thank her properly. Huang Xiaotao giggled. After spending so much time with Wang Xinyan in the East Continent, she had become a lot more cheerful. She couldn't wait to ask, let's not talk about us. How have you been since we parted ways in the South Continent? Yeah, how did you suddenly become a late-stage, nascent soul realm cultivator? Did you have another adventure? Wang Xinyan asked curiously. When it came to talent, especially when it came to improving one's strength, her spongy body was second to none. Even Huang Xiaotao couldn't compete with her in this aspect. However, even she was only a mid-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. One had to know that she was already an early-stage nascent soul realm cultivator back in the South Continent. On the other hand, Lin Yi wasn't even a mid-stage gold core realm cultivator back then, but now he was a late-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. How long had it been? I did have an adventure, but it was a life-threatening one. I might not be able to survive another one. Lin Yi shook his head and smiled. Ah, hurry up and tell us, the two girls urged. All right. Lin Yi had no choice but to tell his experiences to the two women in full detail. From the South Continent's escort agency gathering to being hunted down by the West Mountains sect master. He told them everything in detail from beginning to end. He didn't even hide anything about the 5-poison swamp. After all, the two women were on his side. If he didn't even trust them, there would be no one else in the world who could make Lin Yi truly open his heart to. In that case, even if he became invincible, it would still be a tragedy. Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao clicked their tongues in wonderment. Compared to their peaceful school life, Lin Yi's experiences were simply thrilling. Just listening to it was enough to excite them. The two women couldn't help but look at each other tacitly. Sure enough, Lin Yi was a magical person. No matter where he went, something magical would happen. Lin Yi reunited with the two women after a long time, but the three of them didn't have too much of an ambiguous relationship. After all, this was the divine nun of the Eastern Seas territory. Even if the two women didn't mind, Lin Yi wouldn't dare to do anything inappropriate in a place like this. It felt like he was secretly dating while he was still a student. It was quite interesting when he thought about it. The three of them just sat in the pavilion and chatted. Even after chatting for an entire night, they still weren't satisfied. Instead, they became even more spirited. It seemed like they could talk for 3 whole days and 3 nights without any problems. Yener Xiaodao. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea suddenly appeared in the courtyard and smiled at Lin Yi and the two women. Greetings, senior of the Eastern Sea. Lin Yi stood up in a hurry and greeted her. Although he was Qing Danzi's master, he was obviously a junior before the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, since they had agreed to discuss their own matters. There's no need to be so polite. This is the breakfast porridge I made myself. Have a taste, young hero Lin. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea came to the table next to them and served everyone a bowl. However, she didn't address Lin Yi arrogantly just because she was Wang Xiaotao and Huang Xiaotao's master. Good porridge. Senior East Sea has great skills. Lin Yi drank a mouthful and was full of praise. Although it was just an ordinary rice porridge without any spiritual medicine in it, for some reason, he could not help but become immersed in it as soon as he drank it. All the distracting thoughts in his mind disappeared, and it had the effect of clearing his mind. To think that an ordinary rice porridge could have such an effect. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea really was an extraordinary person. Master's breakfast porridge is the best in the Morning Star realm. You can't buy it no matter how much spiritual jade you have. Master Ling and Master Wei often rack their brains just to get a bowl of porridge. You have to drink some more. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other and smiled. Of course. Lin Yi nodded. After finishing the bowl in 2 or 3 mouthfuls, he helped himself to another bowl without holding back at all. He was the living embodiment of a hungry ghost reincarnated. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea smiled. Lin Yi had always taken a liking to her, and because of the 2 girls, she loved Lin Yi even more. Although she had only met Lin Yi a few times, Lin Yi was basically a nephew in her eyes. Oh, right, these are the Thunder Quintessence pills I bought from the auction yesterday. Give them to Yen first. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea took out a pill and passed it to Wang Xinyan before passing another to Huang Xiaotao. These are supreme grade golden nascent pills I asked for from your senior Uncle Wei. Xiaotao, you can use them right now. As for the Thunder Quintessence pills, I'll think of something else after you condense your soul. The supreme grade golden nascent pills from yesterday ended up in the hands of the second box. The owner of the second box was Wei Hebei, and with how many years of friendship the divine nun of the Eastern Sea had with him, it was obviously nothing difficult for her to obtain just one of them. Although Huang Xiaotao had no use for the Thunder Quintessence pills for now, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea still had a headache, as Thunder Quintessence pills were very rare. Even if she did find one, she might not be able to obtain 5 of them all at once like yesterday. If there were only 1 or 2, the competition would definitely be even more intense. With her wealth, it would be very difficult for her to obtain any of them. Senior, you don't need to worry about the Thunder Quintessence pills. I've already prepared them for the 2 of them. Lin immediately took out 2 Thunder Quintessence pills from his bosom. Originally, he wanted to give them to Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao as soon as he saw them, but in his excitement he had forgotten about it. If it were not for the divine nun of the Eastern Sea's reminder, he probably would not have remembered. He had refined a total of 8 last time. He had given 1 to Yang Chenxue and sold the other 5 in the auction. He had purposefully kept these 2 for the 2 girls. He did not care about them, as he could refine more at any time. What? You have this too? Did you refine the Thunder Quintessence pills as well? The divine nun of the Eastern Sea was immediately surprised. Although discovering that Lin Yi was a 7th grade alchemist was unbelievable, she had thought that Lin Yi only knew how to refine 7th grade great recovery pills. She had never thought that Lin Yi had refined all the pills in the Hong Merchant Guild. After all, it was rather shocking. She never thought it would actually be true. Chapter 48-43. Hee, I've had some fortuitous encounters on the path of alchemy. Xinyan and Xiaotao have already troubled you a lot, Senior. If you need any pills in the future, just leave it to me. Lin, he said seriously. Young hero Lin, you're too kind. They're both my disciples. How could I just stand by and watch when it comes to their matters? The divine nun of the East Sea shook her head, but her expression showed that she was still slightly relieved. As one of the 3 pillars of the Morning Star Academy, her strength was obviously unquestionable. However, when it came to cultivation resources, she was a little strained. Regular cultivation resources were not a problem, but when it came to pills that required an astronomical price like the Thunder Xian pill, she could not help but feel a little powerless. After all, she had always cultivated alone, so she was not strong in terms of wealth. Lin Yi smiled and said nothing, but the divine nun of the East Sea said, Young hero Lin, you should keep 1 for yourself. 1 each for Yen and Xiaotao is enough. There's no point in having too many Thunder Shen pills. As time goes on, the medicinal effects will gradually fade away, and it'll even make people feel like they have a backup plan. It's not good for breakthroughs. Senior is right. Lin nodded. Breakthroughs required an indomitable resolve. It was either succeed or die trying. If he had an extra Thunder Shen pill in his hands, he could not help but think that there would be a next time if he failed this time, which was not a good thing. After they finished their breakfast, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao followed the divine Nun of the East Sea to cultivate. This was a morning lesson they had to do every day. Although the divine Nun of the East Sea did not mind them staying with Lin Yi, the path of cultivation had to be persistent. If the two girls even gave up on their morning lessons because of Lin Yi's arrival, she would not allow it. The divine Nun of the East Sea was not the only one who requested that. Lin Yi thought the same. After all, he was someone who cultivated without rest. He would cultivate diligently whenever he had the slightest bit of free time. Otherwise, no matter how many fortuitous encounters he had, it would just be a castle in the air. It was impossible for him to reach his current level. If they wanted to be together, they would have plenty of time after the morning class. As the two of them attended morning lessons with the divine Nun of the East Sea, the divine Nun of the East Sea even got the deaf nanny to prepare a cultivation room for Lin Yi. She treated him like a nephew already, which made Lin Yi feel rather flattered. Senior Ghost, how do you think we should resolve the matter of Qing Danzi? Lin Yi took some time to ask the ghost for advice. Since he had already accepted Qing Danzi as his apprentice, he couldn't turn a blind eye to Qing Danzi's problems. Unfortunately, with his meager alchemy experience, he simply couldn't find any clues. So he could only ask the ghost for advice. You're asking me? The thing was surprised. Do you think I'm that old thing Zhang Liju? I'm not an alchemist. How would I know? Ugh. Lin Yi was speechless. He was just trying to find a doctor in a desperate situation, forgetting that different professions were worlds apart. No matter how knowledgeable this thing was, there was no way it would know something like this. Alchemy was a very profound profession after all. Idiot, if you don't know, why don't you go ask someone else? The ghost curled its lips. Ask who? Zhang Liju? I haven't even met him yet. Do you want me to ask Kai Zhongyang or Hou Guanqi? Lin Yi said after some thought. Out of all the people he knew, these two were the best alchemists, and they were both Zhang Liju's apprentices. However, he didn't think that their skills were better than Qing Danzi's, so they probably wouldn't be able to help. Isn't that little girlfriend of yours pretty good? The one who gave you the pesticide cauldron? The ghost said, You mean Jing Jing? Lin Yi was taken aback. He shook his head. Although Jing Jing is an alchemist, she's not a traditional one. She's an expert in high-technology alchemy. I don't think Qing Danzi would be able to help with this. Are you stupid? Your apprentice is already a level 7 alchemist. Unless you can really find Zhang Liju, which normal alchemist would be able to solve his problem. Why don't you try asking that little girlfriend of yours? She might be able to help. It's just asking anyway, it's not a big deal, the ghost said disapprovingly. You're right. Lin Yi made up his mind and immediately left Donghai Pavilion to return to Hong's Merchant Association. He wrote a letter about Qing Danzi and asked Honest Chai to send it to the Northern Island. Han Jingjing had also arrived at the Northern Island with Shanghai Laner. However, sending a letter was a difficult task. Every branch of Hong's Merchant Association and the headquarters had their own communication birds, except for East Continent, which was too far away. Normal birds couldn't cover the area, so they had to use conventional methods. From East Continent to the Northern Island, it would take at least 2 months if they took the usual route on a treasure ship. However, this was only the conventional route. If they used a special long-distance communication channel and didn't take the treasure ship, they could directly use a special flying spirit beast to help them deliver the message. The time could be shortened a lot. However, flying spirit beasts that could travel between 2 heavenly islands were rare. It was a big problem to domesticate them on a large scale, and it was even more difficult to unify them and cover the 5 heavenly islands, including East Continent. This wasn't something that a single merchant association could support on its own. Only a specialized transportation company had the ability to do this. In fact, even a transportation company could only do this by borrowing a lot of resources from the various merchant associations. That was why all the merchant associations, including Hong's Merchant Association, could cooperate with them to deliver messages. However, they needed to spend a lot of spirit jades. After Cui Mingshan personally delivered the letter, Honest Chai asked Lin Yi, "The second auction will be held in 3 days. It's an individual auction. Do you want to go and take a look?" Oh, Lin Yi was stunned. He seemed to have heard Honest Chai mention this before, but after meeting Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, he had long forgotten about it. "If you have nothing else to do, why don't you take Miss Huang and the others to have a look? I heard that an individual auction is much more interesting than a merchant association's auction. There are all kinds of rare items. Not only will it be more lively, but there will also be more buyers and sellers. It should be very interesting." Honest Chai suggested. "Is that so? Is there a need to enter the auction?" Lin Yi asked. According to the rules of the auction, it's not just about having enough spirit jades to participate in an individual auction. You must also take out something that can pass the auction's evaluation. Only then can you obtain the qualification to enter the auction. Otherwise, you won't even be able to enter, Honest Chai explained. Chapter 48-44. No wonder individual auctions were more popular than merchant auctions. After all, this rule eliminated the possibility of people trying to pick up scraps. Otherwise, there would only be buyers with hidden items, and the number of sellers who would be willing to take out good items would be uncertain. That's right, the Morning Star auction ceremony is a rare occasion. The Academy has put in a lot of effort to make it a good event. I heard that this rule was personally suggested by Dean Ling. Honest Chai laughed as he revealed the truth. Is that so? Lin Yi thought to himself that he was indeed a wily old fox with a wealth of experience. A simple sentence from him was enough to liven up the entire auction. He then asked, "But if that's the case, doesn't that mean I have to take something out to auction?" "That's not necessary. The auction has an additional rule that every merchant who participates in the first auction will have 2 spots. Since I'm busy with the Merchant Association, I'll leave the 2 spots to you." Honest Chai smiled. "All right then." Lin Yi nodded. 2 spots wasn't enough. After all, even if it was only him, Wang Xinyan, and Huang Xiaodao, there would still be 3 people. But this was a small problem, and he just had to take out something. Lin Yi didn't stay at the Merchant Association for long. After calculating the time, he estimated that the 2 girls would return to East Sea Pavilion before their morning classes ended. For the next few days, Lin Yi's group of 3 could be seen everywhere in the academy. It was rare for them to come to Morning Star Academy, so of course they had to have some fun. This scene broke the hearts of the male students. They looked at Lin Yi with envy, jealousy, and hatred. If looks could kill, Lin Yi would have died 10,000 times. One had to know that both Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were goddesses in the hearts of the male students, especially Wang Xinyan, the 3rd fairy of the East Continent's Gaolin Sea. She was an existence that the male students could only see in their dreams. This wasn't some random name. The Gaolin Sea was part of the Golden Class region of the Eastern Continent, and it was a very large one at that. The number of Golden Class academies in the sea alone was in the double digits, and it wasn't hard to imagine how important this 3rd fairy was. In comparison, Huang Xiaotao's popularity was slightly inferior, but that was purely because she was used to wearing a veil. Until now, the number of students in the Morning Star Academy who had seen her face could be counted on one's fingers. If not, she would have changed her name to one of the 4 fairies. But even so, Huang Xiaotao's popularity was still very high, almost catching up to Wang Xinyan's because of her graceful figure and refined temperament. But now the two goddesses in everyone's hearts were actually together with a young man. Moreover, they were laughing and chatting happily, and from time to time they would have some intimate body movements. It had been like this for a few days, and the male disciples of the Morning Star Academy were simply going crazy. If it wasn't for Lin Yi's reputation in the previous auction, especially the fact that the Academy's chief alchemist, Qing Danzi, had become his disciple and his background was frighteningly powerful, he would have been challenged by a large number of male students. But now, no one dared to provoke Lin Yi. Even the dean, Ling Yuanqing, was very courteous to him. If they dared to be the slightest bit disrespectful, Lin Yi wouldn't even need to do anything himself, and the Academy would be the first to come after them. Hence, they dared not say anything, and could only watch from afar. At the same time, they secretly cursed in their hearts. But on the surface, they still had to pretend to be respectful. However, there were still hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the Academy, and not everyone only dared to hold back. There was no lack of people who wanted to make a move against Lin Yi, such as Bao Zuoliang. Others might be frightened by Lin Yi's background, but Bao Zuoliang was definitely not one of them. This was because his own background was not small, especially in the Morning Star City. His father, Bafala, only had one son, and everyone in the Morning Star City knew of Bafala. After all, he was the one and only city lord. Looking at all the academy cities in the Eastern continent, other than the well-known academies, there was another mainstream power, and that was the city lord's mansion. The Eastern Continent Academy was naturally the core power of these academy cities, but the city lord's mansion and the academy did not have a subordinate relationship, but a parallel relationship. Taking Morning Star City as an example, in theory, the city lord Bafala and the dean, Ling Yuanqing, were existences with the same status. In reality, both of them were core members of the Academy's Elder Council and held great authority. They were both the top figures in Morning Star City. However, according to the rules, both sides did not interfere with each other. Ling Yuanqing would not participate in the governance of Morning Star City, and Bafala would not participate in the management of the Academy. Unless something big happened, both sides would sit together to discuss. Normally, the king would not meet the king. For example, the auction held by the Academy this time had Ling Yuanqing overseeing it, and Bafala would not take the initiative to attend. This was a very delicate balance. Both were in the Academy city, but the Academy and the city, Lord's Mansion, governed separately. This was the unique structure of the Eastern continent. After all, the bigger the city, the more things would happen. There had to be an important figure to personally take charge, or else it would be a mess like the Southern continent. A dean like Ling Yuanqing did not have the time, and the appearance of the city, Lord's Mansion, was inevitable. With a big backer like Bafala, Bao Zuoliang was definitely the most powerful second generation in Morning Star City. Even in the Morning Star Academy, he was an extremely arrogant person. All these years, Bao Zuoliang had always been infatuated with one woman, one of the three fairies, Wang Xinyan. If it was just an ordinary female disciple with an ordinary background, Bao Zuoliang would have no reason not to get his hands on her. However, Wang Xinyan was different. Not only was she the personal disciple of the divine Nun of the Eastern Sea, but because of her extraordinary talent, even Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei regarded her as the hope of the Academy. They had always valued her highly. No matter how bold Bao Zuoliang was, he would not dare to force himself on Wang Xinyan. Of course, not daring to force himself on her didn't mean that he would give up. In fact, Bao Zuoliang had always been thinking of ways to hit on Wang Xinyan. Basically, wherever Wang Xinyan appeared, Bao Zuoliang would be there. It was a pity that Wang Xinyan had no interest in him. Whenever they met, she would not even bother to say a word. Whenever she was slightly annoyed, she would ask the deaf nanny to chase him away. That old woman did not care about background. No matter who it was that dared to harass Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, even if it was a powerful second generation like Bao Zuoliang, she would still beat them mercilessly. Even Bao Zhuliang was afraid of her. Chapter 48-45. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. Bao Zhuliang begged several times and prepared tens of millions of spiritual jades as a betrothal gift to marry Wang Xinyan. But he was rejected by the divine nun of the East Sea on the spot. This old woman was as stubborn as the deaf nanny. Facing the divine nun of the East Sea, Bao Zhuliang couldn't do anything, even if he brought out his father, Bao Farah. Even though he was the city lord of the same rank as Ling Yuanqing in name, he couldn't control the divine nun of the East Sea. At most, he could restrain the deputy city lord. The divine nun of the East Sea, who was the deputy dean of the academy, didn't need to pay attention to him. If that was all, Bao Zhuliang had plenty of time to slowly grind. As the saying goes, dripping water can wear away a stone. As long as Wang Xinyan was in the Morning Star Academy, she would never be able to escape from his hands. But now it was different. Suddenly, there was a shocking Lin Yi. Seeing how intimate this guy was with Wang Xinyan, Bao Zhuliang was furious. In his eyes, Wang Xinyan was already his woman. How could he let an outsider touch her? Fortunately, his follower Su Kexing was beside him, and he tried his best to calm him down. Otherwise, Bao Zhuliang would really attack Lin Yi in a rage. The consequences would be unimaginable. Master Bao, please don't be impulsive. As long as this Lin guy leaves, Wang Xinyan will still be in your hands. Don't get yourself into trouble. Su Kexing used all his strength to pull Bao Zhuliang to an empty corner and whispered, "This Lin guy is a disciple of the North Island, and he doesn't look like he'll join our academy. He won't stay here for long. Master Bao, please bear with him for a while." "Humph, you know nothing. Wang Xinyan has always had this brat in her heart. That's why she wouldn't agree to me before. No matter what, I have to get rid of this brat. Otherwise, I'll never get Wang Xinyan in this life." Bao Zhuliang said angrily. "Ah, so that's how it is. Then how do we get rid of him? Even Qing Danzi is his disciple. If we aren't careful, we'll end up inviting disaster upon ourselves. When that time comes, even City Lord Bao might not be able to resolve it." Su Kexing frowned. "I'll have to ask you this question. You're my most trusted advisor. You have to help me think of a way to get the best of both worlds. Not only will it be able to deal with this Lin, but it won't cause any repercussions." Bao Zhuliang looked at him and said, "In the past, this kind of sinister matter was always handed over to Su Kexing to handle, and every time it was done properly, so Bao Zhuliang trusted him even more. I'll have to think about it." Su Kexing rolled his eyes as he muttered, "The main thing is that this Lin guy's status is a little high. It's difficult to use the methods we used to deal with the other academy disciples on him. This guy is not only Qing Danzi's master, but also the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. His relationship with the outside world is very solid, yes." Bao Zhuliang was also a little apprehensive about this. He was not a brainless fool, but he knew how to weigh the strength of the enemy and himself. If he could bully them, he would bully them to death. If they were too strong, he could only retreat. And Lin Yi obviously belonged to the latter. But then again, although this Lin guy has a very powerful background and is also a rare super alchemist, his strength is really not that great. He's just a nascent soul late stage. If you can fight him fair and square, you can kill him in one move. Young Master Bao. TSK. Su Kexing analyzed. "Yes, this is the only thing we can use, but I can't just go and challenge him like this, can I? A dignified nascent soul peak expert like me challenging a nascent soul late stage, nascent soul late stage. Wouldn't that be a joke? I might even be looked down by Wang Xinyan." Bao Zhuliang frowned. "A direct challenge definitely won't work. Let's not talk about whether this Lin guy dares to agree. Even if he dares, the Academy's higher-ups will probably come out to stop it. We definitely won't be able to take advantage of it. Su Kishing shook his head. Then hurry up and think of some other way, Bao Zhuliang urged. Su Kishing pondered for a long while before clapping his hands. I've got it. If we can't deal with this Lin guy ourselves, then we'll have to find a way to kill him with a borrowed knife. It's the auction right now, so let's see if we can do it through the auction. We need to think of a way to make him offend someone powerful. Yes, that makes sense. Hurry up and plan. The next auction is almost here. Bao Zhuliang nodded. Master Bao, how do we plan this? We'll have to act according to the situation at the auction. Su Keshing shook his head with a bitter smile and scratched his head. But we can do some preparatory work first. Maybe it'll come in handy. All right, we'll do as you say. Bao Zhuliang nodded. Lin Yi and the two girls didn't know that someone had their eyes on them. The only thing they did for the past few days was play around. It was worth mentioning that Lin Yi remembered Zhang Hahai's request and asked Wang Xinyan to help him ask about the female practitioner called Qinyu. However, the reply he got was that she was in seclusion, so he put it aside for now. It wouldn't be too late to hand the golden soul gathering pill to her when he came out. The auction was like a storm, and it became the topic of conversation for everyone in the city. As for Lin Yi, who was the main character, he became the hottest topic in Morningstar City. After 3 days, the main event of the Morningstar auction was finally here. The individual auction that everyone had been waiting for had officially begun. Lin Yi brought Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao to the first floor of Morningstar City. As one of the 3 heavyweights of the academy, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea didn't need any qualifications or spots to participate in this auction. However, she had no intention of coming. In fact, it wasn't just her. Almost all the higher-ups of the academy, including Ling Yuanqing, Wei Hebei, Qing Danzi, and the others, didn't show up. This was an unspoken rule. After all, no one was a match for them in terms of financial resources. If they participated, the individual auction would be reduced to a battle limited to the VIP boxes, just like the Chamber of Commerce's auction. Then, the auction would be a complete failure. I'm sorry, young hero Lin. The 3 of you still owe an entry spot. The staff suddenly blocked the path of Lin Yi and the others, attracting a large crowd to watch. After all, whether it was Lin Yi, Wang Xinyan, or Huang Xiaotao, they were all the focus of attention. Especially Lin Yi, who had been in the limelight 3 days ago. Now, everyone in Morningstar City knew about him. Is that so? Lin Yi and the others looked at each other. Chapter 48-46. He wanted to let Lin Yi and the other 2 in, but he didn't dare to make an exception in front of so many people, or it would be a mess. Ha ha! Now you're acting dumb, aren't you? I'll let you make a fool out of yourself in front of my Wang Xinyan. Bao Zhuliang and Su Kishing laughed coldly in the crowd. Before they could finish laughing, Lin Yi threw out a rank 7 recover pill and smiled. Is this okay? Yes, of course. The staff nodded. Other treasures had to be appraised by a professional appraiser, but this rank 7 recover pill didn't even have to go through the process. Not to mention whether it was qualified to be auctioned. It could even be used as the finale of the auction. Damn, this bastard really doesn't lack spiritual jade. Bao Zhuliang was speechless. Even he, the only son of the mayor, wasn't as generous as Lin Yi. They arrived at the familiar auction venue. This time, because the big shots were not participating, there were no VIP boxes set up. However, with the 3 of them status, even if there were no boxes, they would still be able to get a good seat. Ordinary people only dared to watch from afar and did not dare to approach, for fear of causing trouble for themselves. The auction hadn't started yet, and Lin Yi chatted with the 2 girls and drank tea while listening to the people around him. Most of their discussions were about the auction, but Lin Yi noticed that many people were talking about the same thing. It seemed like there would be an unparalleled trial here soon. What a coincidence. Last time he was in the West Island, and now he was in the East Continent for another unparalleled trial. It sounded like it was going to be a great one. Unparalleled trial? What do you mean? Lin, he couldn't help but ask the two girls. Oh, you're talking about the trial that's going to start in 3 months? It's the legendary road to becoming a golden-class sea magnate in the East Continent, Wang Xinyan explained with a smile. Road to becoming a magnate? Lin Yi was stunned. He subconsciously recalled the giant realm that the ghost had explained to him. Could it be that this trial could produce a super master of the giant realm? Yes, it is said that this is a very special and important trial ground. If you want to advance to the profound ascension stage, you must enter the path of the tyrant, because only there can you trigger the thunder tribulation. Huang Xiaodao said, That's right. Everyone knows that if you want to break through to the profound ascension realm, you must go through the thunder tribulation. Only during the tempering of the thunder tribulation, when the two types of spirit roots are harmonized, can you have a chance to break through to the profound ascension realm, and it is very difficult to attract the thunder tribulation outside. Without the thunder tribulation, naturally, it is impossible to break through to the profound ascension realm. Wang Xinyan nodded. In other words, only by entering the path of a giant can one attract the lightning tribulation and have a chance to break through to the profound ascension realm. Lin Yi said thoughtfully. This was slightly different from the giant realm he had imagined. At least the opening mountain stage could be considered as the giant realm. But to be honest, the profound ascension stage was the preschool of the giant realm. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the path of the giant realm. Yes, so this auction can be said to be at the right time. Everyone wants to take this opportunity to buy some good things in preparation, so that they won't be caught unprepared during the trial. Especially the 5 Thunder Profound pills that were put up in the last auction. It was simply timely. Huang Xiaotao said with a smile, Last time, the 5 pills were divided up by the higher-ups of your school. I'm afraid it's very difficult for ordinary disciples to get them. Don't tell me they already have them. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel strange. That's impossible. The Thunder Xian pill is too rare. I heard that most of the participants don't have it. They can't get it, so in the end, they can only force the thunder tribulation. But it's very risky. If they fail, it's very likely that they will die. Huang Xiaotao shook her head. It's that dangerous. Lin Yi was shocked. To be able to reach the great perfection of the nascent soul stage was said to be 1 in 10,000. No matter who it was very difficult to reach this step. In the end, they had to face such a dangerous thing. The cruelty of the cultivation world was not something ordinary people could understand. If you don't move forward, you will fall back. No one will be willing to stop here. However, even without the protection of the Thunder Xian pill, as long as you take proper precautions, you can still avoid the danger of your life. It's just that failure is inevitable. They can only think of a way to start again next time. I'm afraid that only they can understand the difficulty. Wang Xinyan sighed. Without the Thunder Xian pill, it meant that they could only rely on their own strength to resist the thunder tribulation. In the face of the power of the thunder tribulation, no matter how strong an individual's strength was, it was still insignificant. To be able to rely on various methods to survive was already a fluke. At this time, they still wanted to take the opportunity to break through to the profound ascension stage. Not to say that it was absolutely impossible, it was basically no different from courting death. Under the thunder tribulation, even a slight distraction would lead to death, not to mention breaking through uncontrollably. Therefore, it was already common knowledge in the cultivation world that one must have the protection of the Thunder Xian pill to break through to the profound ascension stage. The number of profound ascension stage experts had always been extremely rare. The ratio of the number of nascent soul stage experts to the great perfection of the nascent soul stage was almost 1/10. The reason for this was that, in addition to the difficulty of breaking through to the profound ascension stage, the scarcity of the Thunder Xian pill was the most important part. Yes, after all, there are still more grassroots cultivators in this world. They do not have a deep background, and it is difficult for them to have powerful and unparalleled strength. They can only rely on their own efforts to break through step by step. However, when they finally reach the great perfection of the nascent soul stage, they are blocked by the Thunder Xian pill, unable to go further. This is the tragedy of a grassroots cultivator. Lin shook his head and sighed. He himself was an out-and-out grassroots cultivator. If he hadn't had so many miraculous encounters, he would have had to face this almost unsolvable predicament. As the old saying goes, a single coin stumps a hero. Now, in the cultivation world, it was the same as a single thunder-profound pill stumping countless grassroots experts. It really made people sigh. However, this was understandable. There was no such thing as fairness in the cultivation world, especially in the Heaven Stage island where the strong preyed on the weak. This was even more vividly reflected in the face of a group of cultivators who kept shouting that they were going to defy the heavens. It was already very benevolent for the heavens to only send down the thunder tribulation on the path of the tyrant, but they still wanted fairness? Fair my ass. A bolt of heavenly lightning would blast all the heaven-defying bastards into pieces. That would be fair. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other speechlessly with the same feeling. If it were not for the fact that they were the disciples of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, the two of them would also be grassroots cultivators. They could only rely on themselves to break through everything. How could they have the strength they had today? Right, since the path of the tyrant opens in 3 months, do you two want to try it? Lin asked. Chapter 48-47. I'm not going. I haven't even reached golden core perfection yet. My priority is to condense my nascent soul. I'm still far from reaching profound ascension. Huang Xiaotao shook her head. What about you, Xinyan? Lin turned to Wang Xinyan. I've discussed it with Master. Master suggested that I give it a try. Even if I don't succeed, I can gain some experience. My life shouldn't be in danger with the Thunder Xian pill. Wang Xinyan said, although her current strength was only at the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, with the special potential of her spongy body, coupled with powerful medicinal pills, it was not impossible for her to reach the peak of the nascent soul realm in 3 months. Of course, if she could not even reach the peak of the nascent soul realm by then there was no need to go on the path of a giant. I see. Lin pondered for a moment and decided, there are still 3 months left. We should be able to do it if we work hard. If we're going, then the 3 of us will go together. Huh. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were shocked, especially Huang Xiaotao, who wasn't prepared at all. She pointed at herself and said, I have to go too. Yes, Xiaotao, you too. Lin nodded seriously. But I haven't even condensed my nascent soul yet. Huang Xiaotao looked at Lin and Wang Xinyan helplessly. She thought that this would be a 2-person world for Lin and Wang Xinyan. She didn't expect that she would be part of it. One had to be at least a master of the peak of Yuanying realm to have a chance to enter the path of a giant. Now there were only 3 months left. With her strength, it was impossible at all. From the peak of Jindan realm to the peak of Yuanying realm in 3 months. She could not do it even in her dreams, could she? Could it be that you're thinking of? Xinyan said thoughtfully. Huang Xiaotao didn't know too much about Lin Yi's abilities, but she'd followed him all the way from the common world. She knew exactly what Lin Yi was capable of. It was impossible for anyone else to do something like this, but Lin Yi was an exception. That's right. Lin Yi smiled mysteriously. So your ability can be used even at nascent soul perfection. That's great. Wang Xinyan was relieved. What are you guys talking about? What kind of ability is it? Huang Xiaotao, on the other hand, was confused. She really couldn't think of any ability that would allow her to enter the path of giants in 3 months. You'll know in the future. Lin Yi and Xinyan looked at each other and smiled. The others weren't too close, but there were too many people here, and it was better to be careful. It'd be troublesome if this ability got out. So mysterious. Huang Xiaotao pouted helplessly, but she did not pursue the matter. Anyway, she would find out sooner or later, so there was no hurry. While the three of them were talking, the curtains of the individual auction finally opened in front of everyone's eyes. This time, the host was still the white-bearded old man from last time. He could be considered a familiar face. Ladies and gentlemen, the individual auction has officially begun. Without further ado, let's get straight to the point. The white-bearded old man changed his style from last time and got straight to the point. Let's take a look at the first item, a pair of ghost-eye eagle king wings. The starting price is 100,000 spiritual jades. As soon as the old man finished speaking, no one showed any expression of surprise. They only whispered to each other. There weren't many people who were really interested in the wings. Lin Yi's eyes lit up as he looked at the pair of majestic black wings that were being carried onto the stage. He didn't know what they were used for, but at the very least, the appearance of this thing was top-notch. 100,000 spirit jades didn't sound cheap, but it was definitely worth it. Why was everyone looking at it with such disdain? 150,000. Lin Yi thought for a moment before opening his mouth. He was rich to begin with, and 3 days ago he had earned more than 80 million spiritual jades. A mere few 100,000 was like a drop in the ocean. Of course, Lin Yi was not a fool. No matter how many spiritual jades he had, he wouldn't throw them away for no reason. The premise of spending money like this was that it caught his eye. The crowd was in an uproar, not because of the 150,000 spiritual jades, but because of Lin Yi himself. Compared to the ghost-eye eagle king wings, this young man with a shocking background was a little more worthwhile. Do you want this pair of ghost-eye eagle king wings? Wang Xinyan asked softly. Not really. It looks nice, but I don't know what it's used for. I'll leave it to fate. Lin Yi shook his head non-committally. To be honest, he really wanted it. The bid just now was just an impulsive one. If someone really wanted to bid, he might not follow. But I heard that the ghost-eye eagle king wings are actually quite useless. It's expensive, but it can only be taken home as a decoration. There's rarely a chance to use it. After all, it's not sharp enough to forge weapons, and it has no other special uses. It can't be used for alchemy either. Huang Xiaotao shook her head. That was indeed the case. If it really had a great use, the rest of the crowd would have been interested. After all, even if they could buy it for 200,000 spiritual jades, it was still useless. Normally, 200,000 spiritual jades were enough to buy a golden nascent condensation pill. But it was not guaranteed to be of superior quality. That was the real treasure. Who would be willing to waste it on a useless exhibit like the ghost-eyed eagle king wing? After waiting for a while, a young man in the distance finally opened his mouth to bid. 200,000. Lin Yi shrugged slightly and was about to give up when the ghostly thing suddenly spoke. This thing is not bad. It'll be useful if you buy it. Lin Yi was shocked. He didn't expect the ghost-eye eagle king wings to be interested in the ghostly thing. He didn't have time to ask why and immediately said, 300,000. The young man glanced at Lin Yi, hesitated for a moment, and soon gave up bidding. It seemed that his mentality was the same as Lin Yi's. They both had an attitude of take it or leave it. If he could buy it for 200,000, he would buy it. If it was more than that, he would not continue to compete with others. 300,000 going once, 300,000 going twice. Is there any higher bid? The white-bearded old man encouraged. The ghost-eye eagle king wings were not an ideal auction item, but it was the first one after all. It was not good to have too much silence. However, the crowd was obviously not stupid. Spending 200,000 spiritual jades for this kind of exhibit item was already the limit. Now that the price had reached 300,000, no one would jump out to compete with Lin unless there was a hole in their brains. Chapter 48:48. Everyone's gazes fell on Lin Yi's head, each and every one of them with a look of disdain as if they were looking at a fool. What they didn't know was that Lin Yi was secretly laughing in his heart. 300,000 spirit jades for the ghost-eyed Eagle King's wing might seem like a fool to others, but this was something that the ghost had specifically asked him to bid for. One could imagine that this was practically picking up a bargain in public. Hey, why isn't that sun guy bidding anymore? I thought he would fight with Lin Yi. What a disappointment. Bao Zuiliang thought to himself. The sun guy that he mentioned was the young man who had just bid 200,000 spirit jades. He was also a second-generation cultivator from the Morning Star Academy, but he was not on good terms with Bao Zuiliang. Young Master Bao, you are thinking too much. Spending more than 300,000 spirit jades for this pair of ghost-eyed Eagle King's wings. You are also reluctant. That sun guy is not a fool, right? Spending so much spirit jades to buy a decoration. His old man will definitely break his legs. Su Kexing shook his head and laughed. That's true. Lin Yi is stupid enough to spend 300,000 spirit jades for this thing. It is not easy to find someone more stupid than him. Bao Zuiliang thought for a while and laughed. Although he did not make an enemy for Lin Yi, seeing Lin Yi waste so many spirit jades was not a bad feeling. Don't be anxious. The best is yet to come. When they encounter the real good stuff, I have already prepared everything. Young Master Bao, just wait and see. Su Kexing laughed confidently. Okay, I will wait. Bao Zuiliang patted him on the shoulder. He had a lot of trust in this little brother that he had played with since childhood, at least among the circle of second-generation heirs that he had come into contact with. Su Kexing was definitely the one with the best brains. The second item is the venomous infant dagger. It is an invincible, godly weapon. What is even rarer is that it is smeared with a rare poison. Even an original infant stage expert would die upon touching it. The starting price is 500,000 spirit jades. The white-bearded old man said as he held up the dagger and showed it to the crowd. Unlike the awkward silence just now, everyone's interest was immediately piqued. Bidders were everywhere, and the price was raised in an instant. This dagger seems a bit strange. Lin Yi took a closer look at it. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary dagger, but when he used his divine sense to sense it carefully, he found that there was an extremely evil aura attached to it. It didn't feel like an ordinary poison, but more like an evil curse. It really is. My intuition tells me that this thing was raised with fresh blood, and it's the blood of an original soul stage master at that. The evil energy on it is unimaginable, and I'm afraid it's already turned into poison. No wonder even an original soul stage master couldn't handle it. Xingyan frowned. All of her mental cultivation methods and martial techniques came from the divine Nun of the East Sea, so she was extremely sensitive to the evil aura. In comparison, Huang Xiaotao had not been initiated for very long, so she was unable to sense it immediately. 2 million. A ferocious-looking, middle-aged man shouted as he stared at the nascent venom dagger. With such a weapon in hand, any nascent soul expert would have to take a few steps back. The killing power of this dagger was self-evident. Let alone a mere 2 million spirit jades, it would be worth it no matter how many spirit jades he spent. 2,300,000 spirit jades. Not far away, a woman with a sinister look on her face refused to budge. Her gaze was even more intense than the middle-aged man's. In her eyes, this dagger was like her life weapon, an existence that was tailor-made for her. It wasn't just these two people. There were a few others who were also raising the price with all their might. Judging from the atmosphere, it was obvious that none of them were people to be trifled with. Now that they were competing against each other for a nascent venom dagger, the atmosphere in the hall was so tense that it was hard to breathe. Bao Zuliang's gaze was always on Lin Yi, and he was instantly disappointed when he saw that Lin Yi was completely uninterested in the dagger. Truth be told, even a nascent soul stage master like him was interested in this nascent venom dagger. How could this guy, a mere nascent soul late stage, remain unmoved? It wasn't like he was lacking in spirit jades. With Lin Yi's wealth, if he really made a move, no one present would be able to outbid him. In that case, those who were also determined to obtain the nascent venom dagger would definitely target him. This was in line with Bao Zuliang's intention of using someone else to do his dirty work. However, now that Lin Yi wasn't making a move, Bao Zuliang's hopes were dashed. If he had heard of Lin Yi's achievements in Soaring Cloud Academy, he would know that this kind of hope was nonsense from the very beginning. How could someone who was able to fight against someone as strong as Lung Rufin be interested in a mere nascent venom dagger? No matter how sinister the dagger was, it was only effective against nascent soul experts. If Lin Yi wanted to deal with a nascent soul expert, would he even need to use poison? After a stalemate, the nascent venom dagger finally fell into the hands of the sinister-looking woman and was sold for a price of 8 million spirit jades. Compared to the first item, the ghost-eyed Eagle King's wing, this price was already extremely high. However, the next few items were sold for a price of 3 to 4 million spirit jades. After all, in the eyes of everyone present, these items were all rare and valuable items. This price was not a loss at all. However, what made Bao Zuliang speechless was that in the face of so many tempting items, Lin Yi didn't even look at them. He didn't even open his mouth, let alone start a feud with anyone. Not only Bao Zuliang, but even Su Keshing, who was originally quite calm, couldn't keep his cool. He couldn't help but say, "Isn't this guy's standards too high? Any one of these items can greatly increase a nascent soul expert's battle prowess. How can he not be interested in them? What should we do? If this guy doesn't take the bait no matter what, how are we going to kill him with a borrowed knife?" Bao Zuliang felt a headache coming on. "Young Master Bao, don't panic. Although this guy's stubbornness is surprising, we still have a backup plan. Young Master Bao, don't forget about that thing." Su Keshing laughed. "How could I forget? I've put in a lot of effort." Bao Zuliang's face was full of pain. This item was something he had taken out after listening to Su Keshing's plan. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to kill Lin Yi, he wouldn't have taken it out normally. After all, this item was very rare. You can't catch the wolf without risking the child. Young Master Bao, you've seen it for yourself. That Lin Yi guy doesn't care about these items. If we don't put in a lot of effort, it won't be easy to get him to take the bait. If he doesn't take the bait, there's nothing we can do. Su Keshing smiled helplessly. Chapter 48-49. That's right. No matter how high his vision is, no matter how strong his background is, at the end of the day, strength is king. Plus, he is a super alchemist himself. To him, this item is the same as increasing his strength. Unless his brain is flooded with water, there is no way he wouldn't be tempted. As long as he is tempted, everything else will be easy. Su Keshing said confidently, "Brat, you have to make careful arrangements. I've invested so much. If I can't create a few powerful enemies for him in the end, I won't forgive you." Bao was said with a guilty conscience. The only reason he took out this item was to kill someone with a borrowed knife. If he couldn't defeat Lin Yi in the end and Lin Yi won it, then no matter how high the price was, Bao Zuliang would be depressed to the point of vomiting blood. After all, this item was almost as rare as the Xian Thunder Dan. Usually, no matter how many spiritual jades he spent, he might not be able to buy it. Don't worry. I've already arranged everything. This enemy is definitely powerful enough. Even if Lin Yi provokes him, he won't be able to walk away unscathed. I can guarantee that he will definitely fight. That person is not a reasonable person, he. Su Kexing smiled mysteriously. Good. Seeing his expression, Bao Zuoliang was instantly filled with confidence. Because every time this guy revealed this expression, he had never failed. This time was no exception. Next is the 8th item, the yuan-raising demonic golden grass. The white-bearded old man hadn't even finished speaking when the entire audience was in an uproar. The response was much more enthusiastic than all the previous auction items combined. And this time it was as Bao Zuoliang and Su Kexing had expected. Lin Yi, who had been indifferent all this while, had his eyes lit up. Lin Yi was an alchemist himself. He was no stranger to the yuan-raising demonic golden grass. This was because this was the main ingredient for the vitality-raising dan. Its rarity was comparable to the thunder mystic rattan. Although the spiritual dan was only effective for original infant stage cultivators, it was still a 7th realm dan. Its effects were very simple. If an original infant stage cultivator were to take one, they would be able to level up by 1 level. To an original infant stage cultivator, this was undoubtedly a holy pill that they yearned for even in their dreams. Furthermore, it was an enhanced version of the condensing infant pill. One has to know that the condensing infant pill only had miraculous effects when forming the original infant stage. Once one entered the original infant stage, although it was possible to continue using it as an experience pill, the effects would be extremely limited. It could even be said to be sloppy and a waste of resources. If one wanted to rely on the golden nascent gathering pill to level up, it would be impossible to do so without at least 8 to 10 pills. However, the vitality enhancing pill was different. Regardless of whether one was an early nascent soul realm expert or a late nascent soul realm expert, as long as one pill was used, one would be able to directly level up. However, it could not replace the effect of the gathering nascent soul golden pill that could break the barrier. If the golden core perfection dared to take the yuan cultivating pill, it would basically result in an instant death. Just as Bao Zuoliang and Su Kexing had speculated, there was no way Lin Yi wouldn't be able to do nothing about this. In reality, as long as one's capability wasn't at the original level, any original leveled cultivator, regardless of their background, wouldn't be able to remain unmoved. After the evaluation, this golden nascent soul golden grass can be divided into 5 portions. In other words, it can only be used to brew 5 vitality-enhancing pills. The starting price is 1 million spiritual jades, the bearded elder announced. 2 million. Lin Yi opened his mouth and immediately doubled the starting price. 2 million spiritual jades to buy 1 golden nascent soul golden grass was a little high. After all, this wasn't a ready-made vitality-enhancing pill. However, in Lin Yi's hands, this thing was no different from a vitality-enhancing pill. Especially at a time like this, it didn't matter how many spiritual jades he spent. After all, millions of spiritual jades were nothing more than numbers to Lin Yi. Now that he had the opportunity to buy the golden nascent soul golden grass, he was already making a profit. At this moment, Xinyan suddenly made a sound of surprise. She whispered to Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, "I think I've seen this golden nascent soul golden grass before." Huh. Lin Yi paused. Right, I remember now. Isn't this Wu Liangbao's? Huang Xiaotao slapped her forehead and remembered as well. Wu Liangbao. Lin Yi paused again. Who would come up with a name like that? Seeing Lin Yi's confused expression, Xinyan smiled and explained, "Wu Liangbao is our nickname. His real name is Bao Zuoliang, the only son of Morningstar City's city, Lord Bao Farah." As she spoke, she pointed at a table in the distance. It was where Bao Zuoliang and Su Kexing were sitting. Lin Yi glanced at them, and his heart jumped. He'd noticed that these two had been staring at him since the beginning, but he didn't take it to heart. After all, he was someone who stood at the heart of the struggle. There were many people who paid attention to him, but not as much as these two. He couldn't help but speculate that these two had ulterior motives and weren't just here to watch the show. Speaking of which, how do you know this golden nascent, soul golden grass belongs to him? He asked curiously. Not revealing one's wealth was the most basic rule in the cultivation world. No matter who obtained the golden nascent, soul golden grass, they wouldn't go around announcing it to the world. Being a spoiled brat didn't mean you were stupid, unless there was something wrong with your head. That's because Bao Wuliang took it out for us to see. He even pretended to give it to Big Sister Sinyan. Even an idiot could see through his dirty thoughts. Guess what Big Sister Sinyan said in the end? Huang Xiaotao kept them in suspense. What did she say? Lin Yi's interest was immediately piqued. He looked at the blushing Wang Xinyan with a faint smile. This girl had a gentle and kind personality. He really couldn't guess how she would react to a spoiled brat like Bao Wuliang. Big Sister Xinyan only said 3 words at that time, but that toad Bao Wuliang was so scared that he turned around and ran away. Because she said, Huang Xiaotao kept everyone in suspense before revealing the answer, Deaf nanny. Lin smiled. This deaf nanny definitely couldn't hear it. He didn't expect Bao Wuliang to be so cowardly. However, he really had to find an opportunity to thank the deaf nanny. If it weren't for her, not only Wang Xinyan, but Huang Xiaotao would also be in trouble. The East Continent College had no lack of spoiled brats. It would be strange if they didn't come to bother the 2 girls. As the 3 of them spoke, there were already several people bidding. The price of the golden nascent, soul golden grass quickly rose to 2,700,000 spirit jades. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.